please welcome my guest for this evening, Radia.
Hi, how's it going? My name's Radia. I'm Radia Screaming Lady. Hello. Hello,
You beat me to it. I didn't even need to say, hey, Radia, if you could introduce yourself and all that jazz. You got it right off the top there.
I feel I have to respond with the introduction, be like, hey, it's me. Hi. Hello. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for being on. I'm glad we were able to make this work out. That we had to delay a little bit here, but better late than never. I'm really glad that we were able to get schedules shuffled out, and that last time we had to call a bit of an audible. Mr. Strudel was not having a great day, but we're real happy Mr. Strudel's feeling much better. He was on the cat cam just yesterday, looking good, feeling good.
He's looking good, feeling good. He's been zooming and booming around the entire house. He also smacked himself into the glass door, so he's doing good.
Yeah, no, if the cat is healthy enough to smack themselves into the glass door, they're in a good place. But yeah, so happy that he is doing well. Mr. Strudel, obviously, being Radia's cat, who is a frequent guest on her streams, and I said, if he wanted to make a guest appearance tonight, that would be fine. I think he's been sequestered to a different room for the time being, so no mayhem, at least for now. We'll see where the night goes.
For now, until he starts screaming at the door. That's kind of how it always goes. I sequester him for about 2 hours, and he's like, he'll wake up, he'll stick his little head out, and he's like, I don't see Mum there. I have to go find her and interrupt anything she's doing.
She could be lost. She could be in trouble.
She could be in trouble, and I'm just actually in here at like 3 a.m. playing like GTFO, and he's like, meow, meow, and I'm like, son, I'm really busy shooting things. Could you just not at the moment? I'm trying not to die in the video game.
Yes, but again, glad that he's feeling better. Glad to have you here. You've been one that has said, don't get you talking about things. If you want to retain your sanity, don't ask you about your interests, and that you will, get people in with your siren song of niche interests, and they will never escape. And to all that I say, this is a talk show. That's what I look for. That's the whole point of this. So bring it on, indeed. I know we're going to have a lot of fun tonight.
I mean, I've been doing lots of weird stuff with programming, and that's been its own like interesting foray into a different kind of, I feel like, content you don't really see with VTubing. At least I haven't in and of itself. I've seen YouTubers do it, and even then it's relatively rare that someone does their own actual like programming and coding side and doesn't outsource it. So I feel like I've made more of a niche for myself, maybe. We'll see.
Actually, I was going to mention that because you've been doing some crazy stuff with different mods lately, and like you were saying, that these are mods you've coded yourself. The most recent one that I've seen is that you've been doing Pokemon runs where you have banned words, and things happen if you say those banned words. So it's not even that chat has to call you out, that programmatically, if you say in this particular run, you aren't allowed to say the word Pokemon. You have to say pocket monsters. Otherwise, bad things happen. Like
the thing that it does for this one, I've taken it and I've combined it in tandem with crowd control, which works relatively well for this. However, I can basically do all the crowd control stuff also from this output, but it's nice to be able to have it already built into kind of the Twitch API as an extension. So if that's done for me already, I'm not going to make my own. It's like making another mod menu on your own. It's just, if it's already there, take advantage of it. It's like how Elden Ring doesn't have a great mod menu. I'm not going to build that from scratch because I'm not going to go insane from doing that. Unless the one I want to build is for Tears of the Kingdom, but Nintendo, I wasted 20+ hours making stuff for Breath of the Wild multiplayer, and then Point Crow got bonked, and I was like, I can't do anything with this until they're just gonna be cool with
hazardous. Anything with Nintendo in terms of just
it's a minefield.
Whether it be like love Nintendo, also really don't like Nintendo. That there's so many things that they could be doing so much better that would just be less effort for them of just don't bug creators if they're not actually trying to do anything malicious with your games and content.
Exactly. The other thing that frustrates me is like there's nothing malicious about literally creating code that uses none of the game's assets. It doesn't touch any of the game's actual code or repurpose it, which is
It's not even a
It's
hack.
good. It's not a hack. It's not a ROM hack. It's its own natural and unique code that doesn't take from the game at all, which is I don't see the ethical issue there, but Nintendo's like, I don't know.
Just
We don't want you to play our games even the way that we didn't design. You decide
Japanese
to do a
copyright.
Nuzlocke? Mm-mm.
Japanese
Mm-mm.
copyright is on a different level
It's
from what we
scary.
have in the West.
It's terrifying. It's actually terrifying the amount of power Japanese copyright holds, and it's hard because mods keep games alive. I feel like one
Oh
of the
yeah.
reasons that so many games stay alive is because of the modding community. For instance, Skyrim is a really good example of something that has been birthed years and years ago, but has stayed alive and in the cultural zeitgeist for much longer than it really should have. All
Yeah.
standards speaking,
The
it's a
reason it has
great
had the
game.
legs to have the infinite amount of ports that it's gotten is because people like to mod the thing and just,
People
don't
really,
get me
really
wrong,
like to
it's
mod
a
it.
great game at its base, even
It
without the
is.
mods. But the reason people wanted to make mods is because they wanted to continue playing that game into the ground, and then someone said, all right, we've done all these other things, but now we just want to keep being in this world by any means necessary to keep our own attention. And Bethesda ZeniMax has leaned into that and allowed it and said, hell yeah, do this thing, please do.
They were like, please make it really weird. And that's the thing that I love is when I get to do mods and programming for companies that really are okay with that, because it makes my life easier and it makes making the content easier. However, like when it comes to Nintendo, the games are really good and there's a lot of possibility for mods. I just feel it is a minefield to put content out there that deals with their games
Yeah,
in any
and
way, shape, or
it
form.
always has been. This isn't a new thing by any
No,
means.
it's not new. It just is disappointing. Obviously, I think the Breath of the Wild strikes really come down to it being close to release of Tears of the Kingdom, and they just don't want they don't want people getting ideas, I think. And I
That's a
think it just
very interesting observation. I hadn't
it
thought about it
sends
from that
a
angle.
it sends a message of like, hey, don't mess with the next one. Don't do it.
I
You
hadn't
know?
thought of it from that specific perspective,
They do
and
it
that
almost every
makes
time.
sense. That
Every time they
just
release a new
preventative measures.
every time they release a new game, they usually bonk a larger like content creator and they take down some of their videos if it has to do with modding or like specialty runs, anything that changes the game up like fundamentally. Yeah, even playthroughs they've taken down. So I feel like it sends a message of like, do not fundamentally change our content. And maybe but the other thing that is in there is they have different terms of like service agreements. They have one for streamers, like you can stream the content, which is it just doesn't make sense. Sometimes they seem to contradict their own rules and regulations, but that's a corporation for you.
Yeah, just it almost makes me wonder of just, do they sort of plan for this? That do they say, okay, we're going to 6 months prior to release of this franchise start looking a bit more harshly at this content, and then pick one or two to, like you were saying, make examples of. And that usually when you hear of instances like this, that they're getting a strike, they're getting a mass takedown, but it's usually not, all right, the channel itself is, pun half intended here, nuked.
No,
That
no.
it's usually not, all right, we're going all the way, but we're going to put a little bit of pressure on them and make sure that they get the message, but then not actually pursue further.
I wouldn't doubt it. Obviously, I don't work for them, but I've worked for enough corporations in my time where there is like there's strategic planning ahead of releases of stuff where they do go after competitors. They do go after people who have been making, certain things, certain items, or they have something similar. Yet they go in there and they try and send some sort of, either very subtle or very open message, depending on what it is. So wouldn't surprise me. Obviously, I can't say with assurance that's what's going on, but it's real. It smells real bad because it comes on. Listen, Tears of the Kingdom is May.
Yep, it's less than a month away. It's less than a month away.
It's next month, and I'm really excited. And the thing is like the reason I was so upset. I was so upset when like the Point Crow stuff happened because I had spent probably 25, 30 hours on this stuff because I was working on stuff specifically for the Breath of the Wild multiplayer mod because I wanted to have some friends that I wanted to do some multiplayer stuff with, and I wanted to add some really interesting mods that also made sure that all the save files were like synced in tandem, and also just some really stupid crap. I wanted to see if I could make VTuber models actually get into the game. But
I've seen that done. I've seen that done with Breath of the Wild at the very least. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Duper.
Yeah, I've seen Duper stuff. So I wanted to see if I could get mine in there and actually do something similar with it, and see if I could just, whip up a maybe low poly model to throw into Breath of the Wild quickly. But, and some other fun stuff too, like, ballistics mods that change the actual force of weaponry, which are always fun. Those are fun. Those are good times. But I can't do that right now because I would be worried to put that on YouTube.
Yeah. I think that's probably
it's
a good
playing
call.
it's playing
Maybe
with a
in
nuclear
year.
bomb. Maybe in a year, maybe in I feel like once Tears of the Kingdom comes out and sits for a while, I can put Breath of the Wild content up because it's not their game that they probably care about as much.
That's interesting, yeah.
Much like how you don't see takedowns a lot of the older Pokemon games.
Unless it's a fan game. In that case, it's dead on arrival.
Yeah. I fear for Coral because it has the exact same aesthetic as, the very early Gen 1, Gen 2 games. Though I played the demo, it's so good. If you've been looking for a nostalgia kick,
I'm frankly shocked that nothing has happened to Infinite Fusion yet. I saw that and I was like, this is cool. It probably has a week.
I've been very surprised, especially with the amount of people who have been making content with it and streaming it has been surprising that there hasn't been an issue. I've been surprised, but it's a pleasant surprise that it. And maybe it's because it's so maybe it's because it's so different and it runs on its own completely new engine, and it's not really a modification of a prior game per se, but it does use some of the assets and music and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the reason. I can't say for sure, but maybe that plays a part in it.
Obviously, all speculation here, but that my thought initially was going to be that it might be at more risk because it is so wildly divergent from what a normal Pokemon game is, but perhaps it is the other way around, that since it is so clearly not something that the Pokemon company would actually be releasing, that maybe they feel less worried about it because they know it won't be confused for something official.
Honestly, that might be it. Because if you look at it, even from a glance, it's not an official game because of the way the sprites look and stuff. They're very different. And they use a lot of Gen 5 music and assets and stuff. But when you actually get in there, the music doesn't loop seamlessly. So it's not an actual Pokemon game. The sprites are different. There's different colors and textures and stuff. So it's not a Pokemon game. And maybe for that reason, they're okay with it. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just glad it's around because it's really fun.
Yeah, no, I installed it, haven't gotten around to playing it myself, but I've been loving watching it and just seeing
it. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a blast. I love bopping around on Twitch and just watching a bunch of different people play it because it's really fun to see the combinations that some people make.
And that
I've never seen.
There is literally exponentially more possibilities in that game versus any other Pokemon game, and that makes the different playthroughs much more different. Especially most folks are going to be using it with a randomizer, so it's not even alright. It's going to be a combination of a Weedle with a Pidgey when you're in the early levels, and then you might have the same things end game, but the sheer number of combinations plus the random element makes those playthroughs feel all the more different in a way that your average Pokemon playthroughs or streams might not even feel.
I also think the developers of the game did a really smart thing, and I will credit them so far for this. You don't have to randomize this through another engine. You can randomize it in the game. It natively. Is a built-in, it's a built-in feature natively, and I think that's awesome. I think that's so cool. Because you don't have to go and download, the randomizer for what you use for other games. I have my randomizer, and it's the UP randomizer is what you can actually use to randomize other games that you have. If you have the files and whatnot, the native files, you can randomize them there and then play them. You don't have to do that with Infinite Fusions. It's in there as an option, and I think that's really nifty. I'm super happy they did that because it makes it more accessible. I think for people that just want to download the game, play the game and not go through the process of like, oh, here's your game, extract your game, get it set up, then randomize the file, put the file back in, play it. It's all there, which makes it really easy. And also it makes for great replayability because it has all the options in there, just like the UP randomizer does.
Yeah, that's really good design. Like you said, it makes it a lot more accessible because frankly, most folks don't know how to do that stuff that I don't know how to do it. I'm sure I could look it up and that would be relatively easy. It's never something I've bothered trying before, but that little bit of extra effort, that it's a type of thing of, with online click-through rates or forms, every single click will exponentially reduce the click-through and the number of participants. And obviously, when it comes to a game, people are going to feel a little bit more motivated to perhaps put in the effort, but even so, that ends up becoming a very quick, even if only mental barrier, even if not an actual complexity barrier.
It is. It can be, and that's why I'm trying to, when I think about mods, when I think about making anything that I do for the games that I do, if I'm going to distribute this to people, I'm trying to make it as simple as humanly possible. The only complex thing comes with my machine learning algorithm, and I need to find out a way to write a simple guide on that because it's not simple. Like, there's nothing simple about what I do to actually train that. The simple stuff is actually setting up voice command codes. That's easy. But training something to recognize your voice and your accent.
Oh yeah,
boy.
that's I
Oh
didn't even thought of that
boy.
because obviously every person's voice and accent is going to be different in that.
Yep.
While we have some very, very powerful voice recognition software available nowadays, not all of that software is going to be publicly accessible in terms of being able to manipulate it. And if you're going to want something that's a bit more reliable, if you are able to get something that is able to be trained to your voice, that makes it all the more powerful. So you were mentioning that in terms of the voice recognition, that you're, for the most part, taking systems that already exist, not coding them from the ground up, and then just adding in some manipulations here and there. But I don't actually, like I said, this is something I've never done myself. So if you could explain it, what is involved in terms of just, for lack of a better term, the infrastructure of what you have done specifically for the voice recognition one here.
So for the voice recognition, there's actually this really, really cool program, and you can get it. Actually, I think it's available on Steam as well, or you can go directly to their website. It's called Voice Attack. That's what I use as the base foundation for all of this, because it's a really easy UI, and it's already there. I don't need to go and construct another like recognition program per se. I don't need to construct something that recognizes inputs on its own. It already ties in. So I use that. And then you can actually code your own phrase, like your own phrases into it, and recognition itself. So when you open up the Voice Attack program, I can actually like open it up and look at it myself. You have options to make separate profiles. And so what I do is I make a separate profile for each game that I want to do certain things with. And the reason I make separate profiles is each game has different controls. I map controls. In the case of like Elden Ring, I map the controls so that they actually correspond with my game. So I can do that. And for instance, like, E is to use something. And that means that I can then like use my mount, and I can just, it gets right up on my mount. And I can still use my controller if I wanted to use like the movement for like WASD. For instance, like open world games are difficult to unfortunately get rid of those movement keys. I tend to like to not map the movement keys to my voice, and because saying like forward, backwards, right, left is not only time consuming, it's just you have to do it over and over again to make those iterations happen, unless I somehow make it continuous and then do a stop command, but I'll figure that out.
How instantaneous and reflex based a lot of those games are, that it's just not going to be super practical, because if you're going to be dodging an attack, you're going to have to be anticipating and saying these things like that half second in advance, which is going to be very difficult.
It is. So the best thing that you can do is map everything else, which is your menu, your utilization, like running, use of all of your items and weaponry. You can map attacks super easy. I do say keep the WASDs and then keep your mouse, obviously, as you scope around the world. Platformers, though, on the other hand, if you're doing like old Mario games, old Pokemon games, those are super easy to just put everything in with your voice.
At that point, it almost becomes a rhythm game.
It is. It pretty much is. So those are really easy, but there's two different kind of profiles I set up. And when it comes to actually resetting my save states, those are mapped to actual different save state keys and anytime in the command. So it's like, if I say X, then it sets you back to whatever save state, and that can be a hotkey. And so I have the hotkey coded in there, and it will just send me back to that save state. And I just need to make sure that I press my save state hotkey, so that continually updates for all of those that I've mapped it to for the banned words. So those are super easy. Movement's also not hard. I can make it recognize different phrases and also speak back to me if I so felt like it. I can make it play music. I can do all sorts of other fun things. I can make it pull in mods. So I can have like a mod folder where all of my mods exist, and it basically is a mod table. So I'll make a command for that. And if I say a certain word, like, if I said meteor, I can make a meteor, roll on in an Elden Ring or something, or anything else. Mimics, you can summon the mimic mod by saying mimic. So there's all that. It doesn't take too much to do. So that's voice attack. You just need to learn the kind of ins and outs of it. And I think if you're willing to read the documentation and really, really, really read through it, it does go over quite a bit, even basic coding, for their specific program. And you can set that up.
Yeah, and then most of this sounds just like if-then statements.
Most of them are, yes. The problem that comes in is if you're making your mods, then they're not. So if you're making your mods and then you're pulling them in, it's mostly if-then statements. The complications come in with the custom modding, and that's its own separate thing that I do outside of voice attack, but it's pulled in through voice attack. So it's in a mod menu, it's pulled in through voice attack, and then it's actually pulled into the game, and that's where that actual like iteration happens. So that's different. And then training it yourself, you can either train it through like the Windows speech recognition if you want something less precise, or you can build a machine learning algorithm and you can stick your own recordings through the algorithm, and it can just listen over and over and over and over as it goes slowly insane for like 500 hours of vocal recordings. Because what I've done is I have my VODs are separate. So I record them on my side, and it only records my voice. And then I just shunt that into my own machine learning algorithm, and it just listens to it. And it perfects the speech recognition over and over.
File after every single stream.
Yep.
Just, all right, here it is.
And then I do that over and over again, and it's gotten better over time. So I feel like around 200-300 hours, you really start to see it do better if you have an accent. If you have a lisp or you don't speak very static, I like very, very monotone. Like the thing with Windows speech recognition, it's okay. It's okay. It's not great. You need to speak monotone and very, very clearly. If you have a voice that is accented, or you slur, or you elongate your words, or you tend to like, even be more staccato with your vocals, it's gonna struggle. So those are the ones where machine learning algorithms do come into play, at least for identifying your voice better.
Yeah, my guess is speed might also play a factor, that if I'm somebody who talks really, really fast, and even if I'm pretty enunciated, that it's going to have a little bit more trouble than keeping up if I'm someone who talks at a slower cadence like this.
Yeah, that was my problem, is I speak quickly, especially when I get on ADHD tangents. I don't stop long enough for it to understand each one of my words. That's the issue with like Windows speech recognition. It just slurs that crap together, and it's like, what did you say to me?
The program says, I heard this essentially continuous segment of sound, therefore it must all be one long word.
And ends up looking like a German word, and you're like, that was not what I said, but close enough. And it's
tried. I head pat you, program, if I could.
You did it. You tried. And that's why the machine learning algorithms do come into a lot of really, really good play when it comes to actually, if you're building it for yourself and you're going to be using it a lot, it's helpful. It's really helpful. And because I know I'm going to be using this in the future, I just did it now. I was like, I'm just going to bite the bullet, and I'm just going to start feeding it information now.
Now that you have it, that the possibilities are endless of where you can plug it in, that you can now just sort of shove this into any game, any mod, and that you can continue to just iterate on it. And you're right that sort of investing that little bit of time and effort now is going to allow you to just use it from here on out. And that, like you're saying, these types of custom mods and unique programming bits are sort of becoming something you're known for, and that I expect that you're going to be able to continue iterating on this and finding new creative ways to use programs, and just having that in your toolkit of knowing, all right, I have a trained voice recognition software that just anything that I can use related to my voice is now an option. That's huge.
And I think it's really cool. One of the great things about VTubing is being able to do really creative stuff with the medium. I think this is one of those mediums where programming and coding just kind of really have a happy place to live. And I think it should be used more. Obviously, I think one of the things I'm going to do, and I didn't realize that part of what I was doing is kind of an accessibility thing. And what I mean by that is, like, I have arthritis. So if I play games with like a keyboard or even my controller for a couple hours, my hands hurt. Some of the voice command stuff I do, it allows you to just control your game with a mouse. You're just having your hand on your mouse, and you just only need to use your WASDs. You can even eliminate those if you want to. And you can play a game with just your voice, which I think is really cool.
That you mentioned that on Twitter the other day, and I was thinking about it. I was like, you're really right there. That's huge. That, you know, it's obviously not a common situation, but you know, there are people without one or both arms, and that playing games for them is, at this point in time, at least in terms of publicly accessible games, is nearly impossible. There are very few games, but that if you end up pioneering this type of thing, that it could be something where you actually reach out to, you know, I don't know, a different foundation or charity that has a focus on people with that type of disability, and be like, hey, I've got this thing that I just happen to make anyways, and here you go, and if you have anybody who you think might be able to use it, here's how you use it. Yeah, because it's not something that most people are going to invest in, but if you just wind up with it in your lap.
It was something I didn't really think about until I had the thought run to my head, and I was like, oh, it really is, isn't it? I was like, oh, it is. Because even if you have something like arthritis, you know, your hands do get really fatigued just because you have to hold them at a certain angle, and that hurts, especially with like rheumatoid arthritis. It hurts. It hurts to hold a controller. It hurts to like consistently hold your hands over a keyboard certain ways. Some mouse, like, you know, specialty mice help with that, but being able to like actually just change your weapons, even something as simple as just taking away some of the key clicks, is really nice. Like if you're playing Apex and you just want to scroll through your weaponry and you just want to talk to do that, you can do that. You just need to map the controls to the voice attack, and you can then download those as profiles, and you can export those and make those publicly available, and people can just literally import them. It's really easy. It takes like maybe 10 seconds once you've given someone the VAP file, and they can just stick it on in there, and they have it for any game, for the game they want to use. So you can make one for Elden Ring, you can make one for Apex, you could make it for, you know, Fallout. They're not hard. You just takes me about, at this point, it takes me to make them and set them up for all the commands to where I feel confident they're not overlapping with anything. Give me about hour, 2 hours for most games. If it's super complicated, maybe 3. If it has really weird menu stuff, that's where I usually come into a problem, is like internal menus, and if there's multiple of them.
Yeah. Also, I missed a couple of follows. Some random Mexican, Wizard0828, and Orabelle. Thank you for the follows.
Hey yo, hey Wizard. Hey Beans. Oh, hey Iwaki. Hello, welcome.
Hey, welcome on in. So are there any mods or programs that you've not been able to make so far that you want to be able to make, even if you don't necessarily know how to do them or don't have the tools to yet, that just in the back of your mind, I'd love to be able to make this, or I'm hoping someone will make a tool that lets me do that?
So one of the things I would really like is being able to do some mods with like Animal Crossing and expanding the maps. Again, it's a hell of a game to mod. It's one of those that's just a pain in their cratuckus. And I've not really seen too many people do it, because again, to do it, you'd have to you'd have to break the
Yeah,
switch.
do some really hacky things there. And I feel like that's just
Yeah.
conceptually, it sounds like it would be more difficult because at that point, you're literally breaking parameters that
You are.
for a map, it's going to say, you know, it must fit within this space. That space is going to generate this much land versus something like switching, okay, this word is now an input for a button. That's going to be just exponentially more difficult to actually, like you were saying, go and change the code and let it do something that the game is physically not supposed to do.
Yeah, those are the hard ones. The things that break boundaries and break limits are difficult. Things that break size parameters, things that break length parameters, any of that is really hard. And then you have to start removing like points of iteration within stuff or within models, and you're like, it's fine.
Yeah, that feels a lot more hazardous. I have a very rudimentary knowledge of coding that I took a couple of classes, like I took one Java class in high school, I took a C++ class in college. I'm at the point where if you give me a block of code, I can most likely read through it and give you a very educated guess on what it is doing and be like, okay, I see what this is. I know the conceptual format of, you know, if-then statements, loops, things of that nature. If you were to ask me to write any code, even in Java or C++, I probably couldn't do it today.
Yeah, it's I've been using Python, C#, Java. I've used CSS. Obviously, like, I don't really use HTML anymore. MySpace is dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, we loved MySpace. MySpace was good for us all. It was a great time. It's where most of us learned to get interested in computers and making things weird, let's be honest.
I never actually had a MySpace. You know, I learned most of what I had, like I mentioned, from basically one high school class and a couple of college classes, little bits and pieces, you know, Dreamweaver, maybe. I missed the MySpace craze by like a year or two. But yeah, I know that in Tumblr, I feel, is where a lot of folks got their first dip into coding if it wasn't in school somewhere.
Yeah, I think mine was definitely MySpace. Before then, I had known about it like tangentially, but I never tried anything with it until MySpace,
Mhm.
and then and then I made a very brain broken MySpace. It was fine. It was great. It was perfect in every single way, and by perfect I mean it very much screamed early 2000s.
But to be fair, that was the early 2000s, so therefore what you made was very good at the time. But if you look at
Good is
basically any web
debatable.
design page, like, are you familiar with Pokemon Live the musical? There is a reason for this. I will get to it, I assure you.
Yes, and oh no.
I bring this up because it is one of my favorite examples of early 2000s web design. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, Pokemon Live is a live stage musical that ran in late 2000, early 2001 throughout the US. It used mostly, I'd say about half of it was music from Pikachu's Jukebox, the stuff that you would see at the end of Pokemon episodes, and half of it was new songs. I was fortunate enough to see it, and boy, did 8-year-old Jay love that show. My mother was kind enough and patient enough to sit through it. If you go back, it is exactly what you would expect it to be for a stage musical adaptation of a anime in the year 2000. It has aged about as well as it could, which is to say it did not age super gracefully. But it still holds a very special place in my heart for nostalgia reasons. But anyways, I bring that up because I, on a lark, one time looked it up and was able to find, on the Wayback Machine, the web design for it. And this is the Pokemon Company for a stage musical. Like, this is a big deal for them. And going back and seeing what that web page looked like in early 2000, just remembering nobody was doing back then what we consider good web design today.
No. I mean, God, okay, I remember 90s, early 2000s, all of the custom-made internet forums. Oh boy. it was like the text preference of choice. It was almost like akin to Comic Sans. It was
Oh yeah, just
it was beautiful. Oh, it was the chef's kiss. It was so You know, do you remember early PowerPoint? There's a slide design that really sticks with me to this day because so many people used it in presentations, and I think you know the one I'm talking about.
I've used PowerPoint a lot. I don't remember any
This
specific
is
format that was
very
really emblematic, but
it was all rainbow, and it was the
oh, are you talking
all
about the word art?
no, oh, it wasn't just word art. No, this was an entire so like, you know, PowerPoint gives you design overlays essentially. Like think almost like
Yeah,
OBS
yeah.
overlays, and it
Mhm.
gives you those preset ones. This one was all rainbow. The background all rainbow. It was like you could do horizontal, you could do vertical, you could do like a crisscross, I think, but it was all rainbow. And it was like if Neopets had assaulted your eyeballs and then combined
Oh,
that with
goodness.
word art, oh
Yeah.
boy. Oh,
Oh.
yeah, you had and then there was websites that I would see like forums that had that exact same background and they also had word art and it was like welcome to, you know, the some role play forum or whatever, you know, people did role play on Neopets, but sometimes they would take it and they would put it on a different forum and they'd make a custom. And back in the day before centralized anything, you know, we had our custom RP forum over here because we took it off of
Uh,
Neopets.
oh
Oh
goodness.
boy.
Now you're making me remember Neopets. Like Neopets, I played primarily for the Flash games.
Mhm.
That just it was a legitimately good Flash game site
It
that
actually
it was like
was.
that flashplayer.com, Newgrounds were three of the places that I really frequented a lot and that I had a couple of Neopets and I usually would go to like the freebie stuff that I remember, the giant omelet, the wishing fountain. There were two different wheels, the Tiki Tac Tombola Shack for I don't know why I specifically remember the full name of that thing, but it sticks with me to this day for some reason.
Once you're in Neopets, you never can get fully out. Let's
Nope.
be honest.
And I never did anything in terms of, you know, like getting the stupid expensive paint brushes or doing complex stuff. I would usually just go around and play the games and see if I could beat my own high scores, but it was a fun site.
It was fun. It was one of the first ones. I feel like I spent like a lot of hours on it and then actually made like internet friends that wasn't like, you know, Messenger back in the day. I feel like that was the first site I actually spent time on before World of Warcraft. Obviously, that was I was on Neopets before WoW. And I feel like that's where I made my first internet friends that weren't just through like scary yield messenger. Who knows who the
Yeah.
hell those people were.
Ugh. Yeah, and I suppose that Neopets in its own way that it's not what we really think of as an MMO, but in its
But it
own way,
kind of
it
was.
is a browser point and click sort of static MMO in the sense that you have these other players. There is the marketplace. There are the shared scoreboards and such. So people are having a direct impact on the shared world in certain aspects. You can't see other people walking around, but that there was enough interconnectivity that I would classify it essentially as an MMO. And I feel like Baby's first MMO back in the day would have been either that or RuneScape.
RuneScape, or you know, there was Habba Hotel. Later on, there was Club Penguin.
Yeah, Club
Even
Penguin I missed by just a couple of years, but some of my
even
younger siblings were super into it.
my younger siblings were into Club Penguin. Then there was also I think there was the Webkins phase, which kind of came after. There was that weird period of IMVU, which existed.
I don't know that one. IMVU?
So IMVU is like it was an open world. I guess the way I can describe it is like an MMO. Think of like VR chat before. Think of like proto VR chat. That's basically what
Mm.
IMVU was. Very similar style of models too, of that you see of like almost your generic anime models that you see in VR chat. A lot of them. So yeah, it was Second Life. Yeah, it was like Second Life to teens. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Bear. Yeah, Second Life was the OG, and then you had IMVU, which is like proto VR essentially, and then you have VR chat. So IMVU just exists in this weird space, but it was an interesting like observation. It was like Second Life but spicier. Second Life, but spicier and very 2000s.
Mm.
Had a lot of that edgy fashion and everything else going on. Definitely really captured the emo hairstyles in many cases. I myself could not do one in real life, so my IMVU character had one.
Gosh, I'm gonna have to look this up later. That there were certain things that I missed. I was pretty in on internet culture earlier on, but there were some blind spots that I had, and a lot of it came down to that, like, I wasn't into World of Warcraft just because none of my friends were. I was very aware of World of Warcraft, and I had like one or two friends that played, but that's one of those games, at least for me at that age, that I wanted to play something with friends. And so I usually wound up just playing, N64 and GameCube and other couch co-op things when I was at friends' places. And I was into RuneScape a little bit with the one friend that I was particularly close to for a while, but we fell out of that pretty quickly as well. And most of what we did was like the really simple stuff. We never really got into raids or anything super complex.
I do really miss. There's something about like the split screen games where you'd go over to friends' houses and you would just play split screen. I miss that. I know it's silly because like a lot of the
And
things
we still have it to an extent. It's
we
just
still
not
have it.
as
It's just
frequent.
it's not as frequent. I do miss it sometimes because I have the like nostalgia for it, but obviously most of the people I know don't live anywhere near me, so it's not like I
Yeah.
can just like drive and be like, "Do you want to play Halo or some COD?"
Yeah,
I
and
gotta like do it online.
yeah, that it's the positive and the negative of things changing, and certainly, over the past 3 years or so, it's been great that we've had the internet and all these things that I've said. There's no good time to go through what we've gone through as a world in the past 3 years, but there's never been a better time either.
I think it's honestly in a lot of ways it's been good and it's been bad. The positives you can take from it is a lot of online content creation is becoming more mainstream, especially being more respected as actual forms of entertainment and creation than it ever has. Like I've watched over the years the birth of YouTube and the birth of content creation as a profession, and
Yeah,
that has been
that
weird.
it's
That has
certainly a
been
wild
weird to see.
thing that you and I, Radia, are on the older end of the VTuber community. That
Yes.
but at the same time, it's like we're not that old. We're not. We're older in relativity here, but we got sort of lucky in terms of, like you're saying, that we got here just in time to sort of see it all start and watch it unfold. And you're right, it has been just absolutely wild thinking back to the early days of YouTube and just how things have grown, and especially over the past couple years, like we were saying, content creation becoming a more legitimate profession. And I certainly think that VTubing as well was sort of a beneficiary of a lot of people being inside and not being able to, go out and socialize it. I know at least 2 or 3 VTubers who got their first model because they got their government check in those early days, and they were like, well, I don't have a job right now and I kind of want to try this thing, so that's what they invested in. Which, hey, that was the whole point of getting those checks suspended and stimulate the economy, and they did it, and that's how they got into VTubing.
Yeah, I wish I had gotten into VTubing earlier. I got into it in end of 2021, so like very tail end. Didn't really start streaming until 22, so it's been like about a year or so, and I feel like I've only really figured out the stuff I want to do in like the past, let's be honest, 5 months. I'm like, oh, I think I've kind of figured it out. Let's be honest, I'll never figure it out fully. It's always going to be changing.
No, but that's growth. That's being a human. Of you never have it 100% figured out. You're just learning. But hey, if you were able to get to the point where you're like, oh, I have this idea in this direction now in under a year, I think that's a success.
I feel like I've done well. I got to give myself a pat on the back every once in a while, even though I hate giving myself kudos. I feel like I've done well, and I know that I have things planned that are larger ideas that I haven't seen other people do. Or that I've only really seen one other person do on their own. And it's not the same thing. So, and I've never seen it in the VTubing space. So it's going to be interesting to carry it over here, and hopefully I can make that like a little bit of niche. But definitely VTubing itself kind of reignited my interest in content creation, because I'd fallen out of it for a bit, like just watching it in general. Early days, if anyone remembers early days of YouTube, the birth of like Smosh and stuff, that was peak YouTube
Smosh.
content.
Oh,
Jenna
boy.
Marbles, that was peak YouTube content back then, baby. I miss me some Jenna Marbles though. Jenna Marbles is like timeless. I don't know. I very much enjoyed her as a content creator, but I had fallen out of it for a while. Just part of it being due to work. Working for the government makes you very boring. All fun and no play makes Radia a very, very dull person. So, and then I was like, I'm tired of this. And I was like, I want to do something fun again, because I had done cosplay, but I'd also fallen out of love with that because of just, unfortunately, a lot of the dynamics in that scene have changed to be very unfriendly. And it's not really a space that I feel cultivates a positive community in many regards. And that shifted for me. And I was like, I really don't want to be here anymore. I love crafting stuff. I love creating stuff, but I don't like going to conventions anymore because they don't feel fun. So I started just not having a creative hobby, and that was like killing me. And I found this and I was like, this looks fun. I've never streamed, but maybe I can give it a try. It's kind of like cosplay. I'm just wearing another mech, right? I'm just wearing the digital mech over my flesh mech. So that's fine.
There you go.
And gave it a whirl. What about Fred? I remember Fred.
Oh, Fred.
I got a TV show too back in the day.
Oh, that's right, he did.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, and it makes me wonder how much or how little money did those early content creators actually make? Because my guess is they probably didn't make a lot, because there wasn't a lot of monetization back in the day. So you could be getting these millions upon millions of views and probably not actually be benefiting a lot.
No, like YouTube's partner program, when it was first initiated, was relegated to like 10, 15 people, and it was the biggest people on the platform. It only became feasible, I think, and I think this is where the tipping point came, feasible to be a content creator was when YouTube made the partner program more accessible. I think that was some of the entry points into making content as an actual job. I think Instagram played a part in that back in the day as well, with actually like monetizing your profile with ads and stuff, and companies seeing that content creators were better to push ads with. That's one of the reasons. It is the primary reason that content creation as a job exists from a corporate perspective, because they see content creators and saw content creators as a valuable means of delivering ads, which is depressing, but it's how we got a lot of this.
It's like, I consider it about as positive as it's going to get, because at the end of the day, it means that, consumers, the average viewer, doesn't have to pay. And that, if that means I need to hear a shout out for insert brand name here at the start of a video, if I know that the person who's making the stuff is getting paid, fine, I'll put up with it. That, nobody is immune to propaganda, nobody is immune to advertisements, but at the same time, I do recognize that money makes the world go round. You need to make a living somehow. And if someone doing an ad read is what they need to do, and that means that I, as a consumer, don't even have to pay for that entertainment while still making sure the creator gets, food on the table, I consider that about as, positive as it can get. That there's a lot of worse things that it could be. And just, think about folks like Mr. Beast. It's because companies like, Honey and whatnot were throwing lots and lots of money at them, that Mr. Beast doesn't monetize his content generally.
No, I think it's a net positive overall. Like, I think it is, because again, at the end of the day, someone can make a living off what they love, that's truly a passion, and not go into just, here's the desk job you need to do for the rest of your life. They can actually make something that has, I feel like, a really, really broad spectrum positive output into the world that people enjoy just because it's someone making something that they love, that they have a passion for. So I think it's a net positive. Obviously, when ad and when ad incentives and all that stuff was first introduced, oh boy, people were not happy with content creators trying to make money. There was that whole phase back in the day, and I was a
And I'm
part of
glad
that.
you've gotten past it. That I feel like it's a
Me
lot
too.
more acceptable right
It's
now.
more accepted now, yeah.
And I feel like we've pivoted almost to the point where people are more actively encouraging of saying, hey, I want to make sure you get paid. That people have fortunately shifted in their understanding. They're like, okay, I understand that this person's going to need to get paid and put food on the table one way or another. And they'll be, go get that bag and just be more patient with certain limitations. But I think that those limitations are pretty reasonable nowadays. Obviously, there's going to be exceptions. There's always going to be somebody unreasonable on the internet. But you are right that at the early parts of it, that the concept had some pushback.
It did. I remember early in cosplay, because I started doing cosplay a long time ago. And this was just at the inception of like people becoming what they called cosplay famous and making money off of the hobby. It still wasn't widespread, but if you did so, if you tried to make money off the hobby, it was not received well. Obviously, it's better now. Like you can sell prints, you can do other sort of things, you can make guest appearances, and it's accepted as just industry standard. But back in the day, you were crucified if you tried to do things like that. You tried to sell images, you tried to sell, prints, anything of that, signed books, all of that stuff. It was just seen as like an affront to everyone who was, digesting your content. Yeah, they just tried. Yeah, they pretended modeling wasn't a thing. Yeah, that too. Because obviously, all that goes into it, from like a photography perspective, it costs money to produce that. It is, especially when you're doing a high production.
Edit photos and actually, put them together and make them look nice.
And I'm glad it's changed in many regards, because nowadays people are like, no, my content creator needs to get paid. And back when I was, in my height of stuff in cosplay, that was not the case. People were like, how dare you make money? You sick
like you're just greedy. That it was almost a purity thing. And
it was this weird means of fucking purity testing that they had going on. It was very odd. It was very, very odd. And it's something that's faded over time. And I'm glad for that. But it was very hard to try and make money in those fields and not have people despise you for just trying to make money off your hobby. And that's not wrong. It's not a bad thing to try and make money off your hobby. It helps help you make more of the content for people that they enjoy. So
yeah, and like you said, that fortunately we have shifted a lot from that. But you're right, it was a wild time to be sure. And frankly, I still see us very much in the wild west of content creation and VTubing. That Twitch has existed for about 10 years now. VTubing, if you're going to draw it all the way back to Keys and I, that it's been since 2016-ish. But in my mind, VTubing in actuality has only really been a thing for the past 4, maybe 5 years. But I feel like 4 because that's when it became publicly accessible. You didn't need a $10,000 rig and set of custom motion capture hardware really at that point, that you couldn't just use your iPhone. That it was with the development of things like Live 2D and similar tracking software where you could just have your phone and that you didn't need any other peripherals, that VTubing truly started, because that's when it became something that anybody could do, not just, all right, I need to have this crazy motion capture room and a full tracking bodysuit and all that jazz.
I think what really made it take off, because even in 2019, it was harder. There wasn't VTube Studio. VTube Studio was the catalyst that made VTubing accessible.
Yeah.
If that didn't exist, most VTubers wouldn't be here, because it would still be difficult from a technical perspective. It'd be hard. Doing this without VTube Studio would be rough. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It'd be rough. Um, Doing anything 3D without stuff like VNyan or, the other 3D programs, that also would be incredibly hard. You would need to have even more in your space to actually capture your movement than just my phone and live, VTube Studio. Those two things made it immeasurably easier to be a VTuber. Then with the invent of even with booth and prepaid models you could alter the color meshes on, that changed stuff for people because then you had even a lower barrier to entry
Hmm.
to get your first model. Then there was PNG tubing, and there's been evolutions to help PNG tubers as far as different movement frames that you can have in, and
Yeah.
then actually key in with a pedal and stuff. So all of that made it really accessible. Before then, 2019, you could do VTubing. You just needed to have the ability to give a bigger upfront cost payment to
Hmm.
get in there. Not it was not just the PC, it was the art and then everything to capture what was going on because you did not have VTube Studio.
Yeah.
Now that VTube Studio exists, it's easy. You can even use the pre-made models in VTube Studio if you wanted. So it's a lot less difficult to get into it nowadays, which is great. And I think that's really for people wanting to try it out, it's easy to try out. You can pick up a booth model. If you just don't know what you want to do yet, you just want to see, I just want to stream, I just want to give it a whirl. You can just do that.
Yeah.
You don't have to
And
have anything of your own yet. And I think that's the better idea too, is if you don't know what you want to do yet, you don't know if you like it, you don't know your concept, there's a lot of really great booth models. Pick one of those babies up and just go to town.
yeah, Just Some Bear mentions Face Rig. That also was definitely an early iteration of VTubing. And like you said, you point to 2019, which actually fits with my projection as well of about 4 years. And it's the type of thing that the difference between what we had in 2019 and 2021 is just
Night and
enormous.
day.
And then
It's so
what we
much.
have 2021 to now in 2023, we could not imagine in 2021 what we have now. And we cannot imagine now what we're going to have in 2025. That the landscape is still changing, perhaps not in the big ways that it used to, but the number of small iterations, the different conveniences, the advancements, whether it be how much your model can turn, that it's not just, all right, you're swaying from side to side, that you have head tracking, that you can have your head turn different directions, the creation of tits, the ability to have integrations on your stream, that there are so many tools and just little bits and pieces that are added now. And it's really innovating, and that we're going to continue to see that. And I'm really looking forward to just seeing, all right, in 2 years, where are we going to be? Because, like I said, I don't think we can even really imagine what we don't have right now.
I'm excited for 2024, 2025. I feel like are actually going to be breakneck years in VTuber technology and just also 3D streaming tech in and of itself. I've seen a lot of really interesting integrations with doing stuff in Unity and whatnot, and seeing VTubers take things into Unity and building worlds and all this other stuff. And I think that's really nifty. I think we're going to see more of it. I think we're going to see a lot of people integrating stuff into 3D spaces with a combination of live 2D. I think that's going to be
Hmm.
really cool. Um, you're gonna see also a standard, a higher standard in quality as well, and you're going to see more intensive rigs to support this stuff. The,
And we're
the
already
things,
seeing that now.
yeah, you're already seeing it now. Some of the stuff I want to do, I'm gonna need a dual rig. I've already faced that fact. I have eaten that the dirty sock, and I've just faced that fact that I'm gonna need this. Because it's going to need the processing power in order to just offload streaming onto one and whatever I'm doing onto the other. It's too much for one at this point. Because if I want to do 3D spacing and I want to do live 2D,
Yeah,
it's
at
not gonna
least with
cut
the
it. Not gonna
technology we
cut
have now,
it.
that either that or computing technology as a whole is going to have to increase exponentially. And to be fair, computing technology continues to grow at a very, very rapid rate in terms of just the video cards we have now weren't possible 2 years ago, and it continues to iterate that way. But I do agree that the rate at which the programs we're working with are going to be demanding is not going to keep up with the progression of processing technology.
No, I never would have imagined some of the VTubing models I've seen 2 years ago and what they're capable of doing as far as how much detail's in them, and that's a lot to put on a computer. Because
Yeah.
the great thing is now that there's the Sprout Capture, that's the newest addition to VTube Studio, that does lower the processing power and, like, resources that VTube Studio eats. Because that sucker just set aside like 30%. I would say used to. Now it's not as bad. Sprout helps with that, but you used to need to be able to allocate a decent chunk of your PC if you were going to use VTube Studio and stream and not have things mess up,
Yeah, and
and
if you
also
were
then stream a big, a hefty game
yeah, I was
like
gonna say, and
Elden
then put a
Ring.
game on top of that, ooh, I don't know.
I don't know. It was you needed to have a pretty decent PC, so that it could run all that and run it relatively seamlessly. Then if you're doing anything wacky with like you doing any plugins, you're doing any integrations, you're doing anything else, all that stuff, that's all extra processing power. Sprout helps a little bit on the alleviating the VTube Studio side, but it's getting to the point where we are doing a lot with our models, and we're doing a lot with the spaces we control, and there's a lot going on with games too, that computers are going to have to get more intensive.
Yeah,
As single rigs, the standards are going to go up, because right now for most things, if you're going to want to start integrating 2D 3D spaces, you're going to need a dual rig. It's just kind of going to have to work out that way unless you are keeping it really minimal. I don't even think I could do it with a minimal, and I've got a decent rig, like a pretty good one.
yeah,
And I don't think it'd be okay.
mm. And we're already seeing some folks start to do these spaces in Unity that there's several in the VTuber community that have done it, but at this point they are still pioneers, that it is by no means a standard, and that, anytime we get to see some of these worlds that people are working on, that it is very much considered an innovation. But I think that in 2 years' time or so, that's going to be considered much more normal, much more commonplace, and that watching it all unfold and seeing these pioneers in the space, that I'm really curious to see where those folks go, because it's always the early adopters and the innovators that end up being able to benefit a lot, because that's what you get for innovating the space. And getting to see that develop in real time is just very special.
There's someone I really, really want to shout them out. They're a friend, and I've been watching them go on this journey of developing their own entire world in
I think I
Unity.
know who it is, and
And it's so cool. Have you? It's Steez.
I
It's
was
Steez Hornsby.
Steve
If
has
you've
been
been
on this show
watching
before.
Steez's
Steve has
journey,
been a guest
oh,
before.
it's been incredible to watch that develop. I go in there and I kind of just sit back and absorb it,
Oh my
because
gosh.
it's stuff that I'm so interested in it. But he's doing it so well, and it is a very interactive world that also is so nicely detailed and just fits his character, and it tells a story.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
it's not even done. It's not even like
Like
25%, 10% done, but you see the story, and you see all of the aspects of the lore in there, and I'm like, oh, this is looking good. Oh
yes.
yeah.
Steve was on the show a couple months back talking about it, and that as I was talking about innovators in the space, that the folks I really consider sort of top of mind, it's Steve's Pumpkin Potion did a lot of early stuff with it. I know Cab has done some stuff. Duper, obviously, who has also been on the show before. That there's a couple others, but there's these folks, and Steve will post every week or so just this little video of him walking around this world, and it looks at first glance almost just like a VR chat world. But the fact that it is its own independently running world, and that basically he can stream from this, and that he can build this and do all these extra things, that I think that's probably the easiest analogy to make at this point in time is, imagine just being able to have your own VR chat world that you operate in.
And I think that's one of the niftiest things, because I've been contemplating doing things like that, because I really want to have some of my backgrounds be super immersive, and I want to have them animated as well, and I want to integrate those things, and I feel like it's easier to do in Unity, and I feel like it does bring a greater level of kind of this like aesthetic immersion to the stream, and I want to do that with the combination of like a 3D model at some point. That's its long-term plans, but I think it's really cool to see that evolution. It's having your own personal MMO almost.
Yeah, just imagine a just chatting stream where you are sitting next to the VTuber on a bench or at a cafe. That it's not just, what we have right now is quite nice, where you have the model and you have this very nice animated background that we're showing. Sometimes folks will have static backgrounds, but that it is a 3D world, and that not only we have folks that will stream and do streams in VR chat, but that it's going to be something super custom, and that they can sort of lead you around in these special ways and make a lot of custom toggles for how the cameras move, or even for world events that, at the click of a button, that in this fantasy world that Steve is making, conceptually, he could push a button and have a dragon attack.
Which is
I don't know,
hilarious.
just a random example here.
It's really cool because you control those aspects of the world, which is almost in its way controlling like a mod for a game.
Yeah.
It's a different level of like elevated, not only just immersion, but control and manipulation of your own space, which is not something that a lot of people do currently. And so it's really interesting to see when people go that extra mile to do it. And I've been watching Steez's stuff and I'm like, this is gonna be good.
And once you have that, just the creativity and innovation you have, once these systems are in place, that people can make their own game show sets then, or that you can be doing like, tic-tac-toe or chess or whatever, or have a drive-in movie theater where instead of bringing up a window capture, that they'll have it, on this projector screen in their world. And that just all these different types of ideas, again, that we might not even think of right now because it's just not possible. But once people have these tools in their hands, give them a couple weeks, a couple of months, people are going to find things, and just, good ideas spread very quickly. That when the Twitch integrated throwing system was released, you saw that, and the first time you saw it, it was like, holy cow, that's so amazing. And then to realize, oh, you can just, go and buy this. And then it has since become a very standard tool that a lot of VTubers use. And one of the great things is, that's something that only VTubers can do. That a Facecam streamer can technically do this and put it on their overlay. It's not going to play off.
It's not going to look the same, and it's just not going to feel, it's not going to have the same impact that it does.
It literally can't have the same impact where, that
it can't toss you around,
can hit you in that you don't need to recoil or actually move your body to have your model react to being hit. A Facecam streamer would have to look and see, all right, things are being thrown at me, and go, and move along with it. That's not going to work.
It doesn't have the same effect, which is why I feel like it's harder to do practical effects in real life. Whereas in this space, you can manufacture all that ahead of time.
Yeah.
You can create them as plugins, as integrations, and it feels right because you can program the physics in there. I can't pre-program physics in real life. I don't know how it's going to roll out when things happen unless I've decided to do hours of math and seamlessly perfect it in one fell swoop. But you can do that inside of these digital spaces, and it's not
a Facecam streamer is not going to be able to go into even VR chat. They won't be able to go into these spaces that, okay, maybe at most they could green screen themselves in. It's not going to be the same. That it's going to look weird. Whereas VTubers are going to have access to all these things. And I think that's actually going to be one of the things that helps really push VTubing even farther in mainstream. That my guess is we're going to have one or two real breakout just talents that end up finally hitting public consciousness. That there's a couple that are close now. That you have a few in, like, I'd say Calliope Mori and Gargura, who are very close to being in public consciousness. It's not there yet outside of Japan. But I think eventually we're going to have one or two that sort of break that barrier and become that very publicly recognizable thing that you could go up to, the checkout person at the supermarket, and that they will have heard of VTubing. You can't do that right now.
No, not right now, unless it's someone who already is kind of in that, a tangential space. It sounds weird, but I feel like at some point we're getting close-ish. It's only in Japan, but I feel like at some point,
it very
just
much
like how just like how social media influencers started, appearing on advertisements or in shows,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like VTubers are real close.
Oh yeah, because it, like you said, it's already happening in Japan, and I very much consider a when, not an if, and it is just when and who and where and how. But it very much feels inevitable to me. It's just waiting for it.
Yeah, I don't think it's far off. I think we're just waiting maybe another 2 years. I feel like at some point we're going to get some sort of like VTuber show. We're going to get something where they also appear in a space with humans, with like actual
Oh yeah,
full-fledged like carbon bodies.
'cause
I
we've
feel like
already
there's going to
seen
be shows with
that.
it.
We've already seen that in a couple of places. That there are podcasts and whatnot. There are different pre-recorded shows that have already had VTuber guests. It's going to be a bit more difficult to do with a live studio audience. You can have a tall screen there, and that might be something. We have that type of technology for the concerts that are done nowadays. Hololive is going to have their first U.S. concert in July, but I think you're right that eventually there's going to be one that appears, on a real late night talk show. That they're going to be talking with Jimmy Fallon or Stephen Colbert, and I hope that the hosts will treat them with respect. And I generally have a pretty good opinion of real talk show hosts that they know what they're doing. Yeah, and Justin Bear, Hatsune Miku has. Yes, so I would say Hatsune Miku is in relative public consciousness, but the concept of a Vocaloid is not quite the concept of a VTuber. That I think if you were to ask the average person about a VTuber, that they would think it is a Vocaloid and that they would think it is a computer program and not a person operating a rig.
That's what my dad is. He's a great guy, but he still thinks that VTubers are Vocaloids. Because he saw Vocaloids first. And I introduced him to Vocaloids. And like, yeah, Vocaloids are kind of in a way, when you see the live concerts for Hololive and stuff and all that, those were like the proto versions of it.
Yeah.
Very much so. But those weren't people operating it. Those were all movements done through a program. Yeah. Now it's people operating it, and or maybe it is preset movements depending on the show. Can't really say, but I'm going to assume that it's being motion captured from another room and then being transmitted. But I can't say for sure.
Yeah,
but there is a person behind it piloting it.
Yeah, or if it is a pre-recorded set of motions, that they were probably at least recorded by a real human and not programmatically animated.
Yeah, whereas all of that, for Vocaloid had been animated in MMD or maybe something else, most likely MMD, which was Miku Miku Dance at the time, and it's still in use, but that was where it had all been animated in, and then it was projected up on the screen. Now, those are all captured in real time with actual like full body capture suits, and if it isn't just being live captured, then it's been pre-recorded in the same way, and then is being, re-shown.
Yeah. And just there's that as these tools and just different opportunities become more accessible and more innovated, that I think we're going to end up seeing a lot more facecam streamers and live content creators take the shift, because it's just going to become this tool set that they will not have access to. And that what makes a content creator good is their creativity of just what are they able to do, what are they able to create. That's the whole thing. And I think that as this tool set becomes more and more appealing, that it might not be that you see, I don't know, Mr. Beast or PewDiePie or whatever become a full-time VTuber, but I expect that we'll see a lot of these folks have VTuber models that they sort of use in tandem with their continued just face cam work, and that for certain things, for certain events or different projects that they know they can only do virtually, that they're going to want access to these tools when they want them, even if they don't necessarily want to use them on a day in, day out basis.
I think you're correct. I really do. I think most people who still do live content, they will have some sort of digital avatar backup, whether it's a 3D or whether it's a 2D model. I really think that's the way content is going, because of just what it seems that the audience demands as far as entertainment has shifted dramatically. Like, it's no longer just watching let's plays on YouTube. It's not really the content anymore. It's how weird and creative can you get with what you're doing, because people are interested in seeing that. So I feel like that might start taking precedent for some people.
Because we already see it, that there's a few content creators already that were doing work before VTubing that have gotten VTuber models. Some use them more frequently than others. Some have completely shifted over. Others will only use them on rare occasion. But I think that's just what we're going to see happen more and more with the more mainstream folks. That a lot of these ones that we've seen at least sort of adopt VTubing, even if only partially, were at least in gaming or anime spaces, so that they were tangential in that it's very logical of how they got in early. But it's going to be then when, like, the really, really mainstream folks who aren't already in these types of spaces just realize that's really cool. I want to be able to do that, and I know I just can't do it in a normal physical, IRL space.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to see people, as far as it gets into entry to streaming, more people are probably going to become VTubers than actual facial live streamers. Like face cam live streamers going forward.
And especially with just, the privacy benefits that it's
it's like I'm okay sometimes showing my face. However, when I'm streaming, I don't want people to look at my face, I like being able to just be here and not have to worry about any of the way of like how I look, or just if I don't feel good, I can roll up to stream and like feel like crap, and I can have my hair tied back, and I can also just like have all of my water, and I can have a box of tissue. I don't have to worry about any of that, and I just get to focus on the entertainment and not any other aspect. I don't have to focus on the appearance, my face, looking fatigued. I can just stream for however long I want, and this is all you see.
Yep, but that's part of why I don't.
It's refreshing.
Part of why I don't show my face. That it was sort of a twofold thing. One was very much the same reason of just it lets you focus on everything else. Two was just laziness, frankly. I didn't want to have to bother setting up a nice looking background or worry about lighting, or I didn't want to invest in a VTuber model of my own. I wanted to keep the focus on the guest, and it allowed for a very easy and, yes, also lazy decision of just, okay, I'll be a disembodied voice. That's fine.
Honestly, I respect that. Like, because people ask me, they're like, oh, well, you did cosplay. Why wouldn't you do like face cam stream? And I'm like, because I'm actually not comfortable with it. Believe it or not, I was only okay with like doing photo shoots when it was purely at my full discretion. Like, other than that, no, I don't want to be on video. That's like, it's such a weird like duopoly of personality thing. I don't like being on video because I don't like being perceived. I really hate it so much.
I do not like pictures of myself.
Well.
That I have a very positive self-image. I think that I look all right. And at the same time, I just don't like looking at pictures of myself.
Yeah, I'm very selective, and the pictures I like looking at are like the cosplay photos, because I'm not looking at me. I'm not perceiving me. I'm perceiving a character, which is like, oh, it's so much easier to rationalize. Whereas like looking at photos of me, I'm like, ugh, ew. And I think I look good, but I don't want to look at photos of me. I don't know. It's like looking at video footage of yourself when you're younger, and you're like, oh,
or hearing your voice played back to yourself. That it's just that
it's even worse.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Oh no, hearing recordings of me is like, oh, I would just like to not perceive any part of my existence. And I understand. It's more comfortable. Yeah. And I don't play a character. I'm me, but I have a digital avatar that I just pilot. And this is the comfortable way in which I present myself. And it's nice that a lot of people respect it. I really do. I do like that, because people really haven't asked me beyond probably when I first got into VTubing, why didn't you do face cam streaming? And I'm like, I wasn't comfortable.
Yeah, I'm not going to begrudge people for innocently asking the question, because it's certainly a choice. And it's just, I am sort of curious. Why did you want to go with this versus that? And, if they're going to ask that the one time, I think that's okay. And then, people sort of back off and they're like, okay, that's nice.
Yeah, the one time is fine, but they're like, "Oh, you really should change." And I'm like, "I don't think I
No,
will."
no.
No. That's gonna be a no from me. It's gonna be a
And
nope.
it's funny because mentioning this, I'm realizing if I have my count correct, you are one of 6 guests who have seen my face, or at least part of it, because we met at an event. And so I say part of my face because I was wearing a mask. We were all wearing masks at this place. I won't go into specifics beyond that, just for privacy reasons. If you want to go into more detail, you can. But I it did occur to me. I was
Yes.
just like, oh yeah,
You've seen me.
you've seen me, at least most of my face. It
Yeah,
was
you've perceived the upper half of my face.
yes, and that it was very incidental that it was actually another past guest of mine who I was planning on meeting up with at this event. And they were like, oh, yeah, I'm going to meet up with a couple other people. And he sort of dragged me along, was nice enough to introduce me to you and a couple other folks. We were mostly at separate ends of the conversation circle, didn't interact a ton, but that was one of my first interactions with you. I think I had maybe seen a tweet or two from you, but that's what initially sort of drew my attention to you. And then I tuned into a stream or two afterwards. Was like, oh yeah, I gotta have her on the show.
I'm just a weirdo. I'm just a big old weirdo. But yeah, no, it was like it's the biggest pro to VTubing. It also just opens streaming to those who wouldn't try it. Like I have a chronic illness. I don't want people to see that. Let's be honest, on like a day-to-day basis, I don't want people seeing my rashes. I don't want people seeing like if I had surgery, I don't want people seeing how tired I look. I don't want people to perceive me at what I feel is probably my humanly worst. And so I'm able to be really like, jovial and optimistic and funny even during those moments, but I just don't want people to see that physically. And so this has been the best medium in which to broadcast myself, in which that's not really perceived. I sometimes talk about it, but it's not something that people ever focus on, which is nice. And I'm glad it's not. Whereas in real life, people might hone in on those aspects, and I don't want people consistently pointing out, like, oh, why do you have these rashes on your arm? And I'm like, I'd just like you to not ask about that,
Thing, but yeah, don't ask folks about that because it's probably not a positive thing one way or another.
It's the amount of time I've had it asked. It's like, is that contagious? And I'm like, no, but thanks for asking. Thanks for asking. That's very awkward. Thank you for dragging your small child away from me. As you're like, is that contagious? And you're like, no, it's not, but it's fine. Have fun. That's happened in my life before, where someone was like, you should get away from that woman. She has an illness. Like she's got something contagious. And I'm like, oh, it's not, but I wish it was right now.
Yeah. Is there any VTubing tool or tech, whether it's something that exists and isn't accessible or doesn't exist, that you hope will be developed soon?
Let's see.
Again, like I said, it can be difficult to think of things that we just don't have yet. So
a lot of it is, I think, better live 2D hand tracking and like full body movement for live 2D is, I think, something that would be really interesting. Because right now you can do hand rigging and tracking. It's just not great. It fails in a lot of ways, but that's mostly due to just the live 2D medium and trying to track those very intricate movements. So it has to be drawn to be able to track those properly, but it'd be nice to see them be more detailed and just also respond better in the future.
There's a couple of folks that have pretty good hand tracking nowadays. Cabal comes to mind for one. That his is definitely very custom, and even that is relatively rare. But even watching his streams, that occasionally you'll see the hand just glitch out, and that we aren't quite there with the tracking technology, but it feels so close that I think it's just going to take 1 or 2 more breakthroughs, and then having that program be publicly accessible or cheap enough to be accessible, that it will then become very, very quickly adopted. And then the question of, all right, can we get this in live 2D, or is it going to be limited to 3D?
I feel like it's gonna be it's gonna be a hard divisional line. It might be it might become, at least the more detailed tracking, limited to 3D just
Yeah,
because of the way that the parameters work. Unfortunately,
yeah,
there's no way to really map the 3D parameters perfectly to a 2D
2D.
image.
Yeah,
It
I expect that.
just doesn't work.
Yeah, I expect 3D will get it before 2D. My guess is that we'll wrap back around and that 2D will get it
It'll get a
2-ish years after 3D gets it.
it'll get a boost. It'll definitely be better. It just won't be the same. Or if it's going to be the same, you're gonna need to have an innovation in the way that live 2D art is drawn for hands. And somebody's gonna have to figure that out.
Yeah.
Because God knows it ain't me.
Mm,
I am not on that side of the aisle. Programming, yes. Cutting up art and making a live 2D become a 3D in some respects, because that's what you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to make, for the hands, the rest of this is gonna be a live 2D image, but you're gonna have to make like almost 3D parameters and be able to make a 3D hand in
Yeah,
live 2D, which is gonna be wacky.
yeah, transitioning the motion, just literal dimensions there, and being able to do that, that is rather complex.
That's really hard, and that's also just gonna be, that itself. I would not blame if somebody was charging like $2,000-$3,000 for just the hands for that, because that, for a live 2D, that's a lot of
Oh
work.
yeah, I expect it'll, as most things are, it's going to start off very expensive. It's going to have that barrier to entry, and just when it's first developed, you're only going to see the high-end models with it. But then over time, that the price it will come down, the barrier to entry will come down, and that eventually it'll become something that is more generally accessible. But it has to take that time to get there.
Yeah, 3D I think is easiest, because what you can do with 3D is you can almost develop like a full body capture suit, but just for the hands, and make them highly detailed, and that can become the new method in hand tracking. Just they have that kind of now, but it needs to become cheaper because it's still highly expensive. And if those can become detached from a full body suit and just become like, almost like gloves you slip on, that could be the next innovation tipping point for 3D.
Yeah, that would
Whether
make
that
sense.
comes to 2D, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm unsure.
I think the concept there of having gloves, where one of the big benefits right now is that you don't need a lot of actual accessories for tracking, that you're able to just do it with a phone camera. But for hands in particular, my guess is that it will start off needing that actual peripheral, and that over time that technology will develop enough to be able to not need it. But that's probably where we're going to end up first.
I think so. I think 3D is going to get it first, as you said, and then live 2D. But I'm excited to see where stuff goes. Obviously, I didn't expect for myself to have something like this ever. Never thought that. So I'm already pleasantly surprised, especially with new stuff coming in. So I never expected something like this when I was growing up.
Yeah,
I
again,
never expected to see
we
this.
couldn't have imagined what we have now 2 years ago, and just
Nope.
that's part of the fun of it all, and why I find VTubing so cool and intriguing, because it's just, like I said, this tool set, the possibilities are inherently more, and they are growing at such a rate that face cam streaming technology is about where it is, that you can very cleanly, we have high quality cameras, high quality audio capture, and that's about all you need. And as other people have said, VTubing is just content creation with extra steps. However, with those extra steps comes extra tools that we're looking and talking about all this different technology, which is going to have an added cost, but with it is going to come benefits, that you will be able to do things that eventually go beyond what you're able to do as a face cam streamer. And it's just, seeing that really develop in real time.
Yeah, face cam streaming used to be the industry standard, but now I feel like VTubing is becoming the
It's catching up
industry
very
standard
quickly.
for streaming. I really feel like PNG tubing and VTubing, I feel like are overtaking a lot of the streaming sector. As far as what you see as prominence in content creation.
And what I think will be the interesting tipping point is, right now, VTubing is face cam streaming with extra steps, that it is more complex to be a VTuber. It requires more effort to set that up and have it work cleanly than to be a face cam streamer. I think there's going to be an inflection point when it actually becomes so easy to set up a VTuber model that the effort of getting good lighting and audio and just face cam streaming will become potentially more difficult than actually just, starting a VTubing program. Of the effort required to have a good streaming IRL setup will require more effort.
Yeah, I mean, it already requires a ton of effort, because like if you're gonna make a nice streaming setup and you're doing anything with your background, you've got to put effort into the background aesthetics. But I think it will become easier as VTubing. We've got some stuff like Shoost, which does intricate lighting and effects. If they can build that in to like VTube Studio, it's over. If you can make that a plugin for purely just OBS instead of its own separate like overlay capture you need to do, then like that's
once
makes
you
it
have
even
these
easier.
other things native in VTube Studio or whatever program that you have that is running your model and everything, that if it becomes then just easy to download that, set that up on your computer, like you're saying, it'll be over. And it's going to happen pretty quickly, that as soon as we have this technology, you'll blink and overnight you'll see a lot more people adopting it because of that type of accessibility. And it's conceptually just a small step. In terms of technology, it's a big step, but then once you have it, the effects will be felt pretty quickly.
Yeah, it'll be game changing once you can actually, and you don't have to set this up customly yourself. Once it's actually like just a plugin that you just you boop on in as a browser source or something, that will change it. Once you don't have to do all the setup or nested scenes or any of this other custom stuff that becomes really complicated and you need to know how to use OBS perfectly. It'll be a lot more widely accessible. Also, Wizard, it was Shoost. It's SHOOST. You can look it up, and you'd have to get it from their Patreon, but it's a custom little program, and you can use it to make nifty lighting, and it can change how your VTuber looks. It can do a lot of different nice effects like diffusion and blurring, and also can do like a little motion effect as well right now. So it can do a couple nifty things.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm very fortunate. I'm just a voice. I don't have to worry about any of that. Yay, laziness.
Until one day, if you don't become a voice, then you have to worry about all of this.
Oh, yes. And that's what has me so fearful and just very comfy as a voice, that for my second anniversary charity marathon in January, we reached a goal that I hadn't expected, and I had to sort of scramble for, all right, what are we going to do if we hit this next milestone? And one of them was for a Vtuber Talk mascot. And that is one of the last things that I need to do, that I've been sort of putting in the early work. It's going to take a while to actually get this one out, because I figure, all right, if I'm doing this, I want to make sure I get it done right. But then there's the very inherent question of, do I make this mascot something that I can operate? Or is it just a mascot? And that question is one that I have not decided the answer on yet, but it's one that I realize is an option, and I'm weighing it. Because, there are certain things that, would it be nice to have a model? Maybe. Obviously, I fully understand the cool things that you can do with a model. And it's just, do I decide to take that plunge? Time will tell.
Yeah, either option's valid. Even if you don't do the mascot piloted by you, you can still do things with like AI integration where it can speak. You could do
oh yeah, I would potentially do that.
Yeah, you can do all that. You could do it with voice attack, and you can actually have it respond to set commands and banter with you. So you can do all of that fun stuff. If you didn't feel comfortable like piloting it, you can still have it as like a really fun interactive buddy, which is always an interesting thing to see.
Yeah. And
I have my cursed cat.
That's been fun, of just seeing people, get their little sidekicks, but also to see the general public of chat become more adept at using TTS. That I will point to, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Miss Jackie, but
I am, yes.
Her chat I point to as the gold standard for TTS operators, because the stuff that happens in that chat is wild.
They're a very, very like well put together chat, and they're on point with the TTS comedy. They're on point with the TTS comedy. Bring forth the Awupian. This guy, the little guy. What's little guy?
Whoopsies. That is the wrong shout out. That's the wrong Miss Jackie. But yes, yeah, we got a little guy right there.
I want to eventually make him into something else for the stream, but right now Strudlebot has taken over precedence as the TTS mascot. So there he shall stay until eventually there's a 3D Whoopian model, and that is then my creature that must speak.
Mm. Yeah, there's been a lot more in terms of those types of TTS integrations that we've been getting, and they're very fun.
They are a lot of fun. I think they're great for chat interactivity too. So I like playing around with mine, and I know my community likes to try and break it.
Oh yeah, well that's always going to be the game for chat, of whether it is TTS or any tool, whether it's Twitch integrated throwing system or any plugin. It's all right. What can we do to make this thing do what it was not supposed to do?
If they type the words hon hon,
yeah, it
becomes possessed by the French.
Or just hon hon.
Hon, and he just starts to gurgle. The ones they've not found out the secret of like what the gurgle, the bumbling is, because the bumbling is not just bumbling. And I'm not going to tell them what it is ever.
Oh boy, the treasure hunt continues.
Yeah, you can find out on your own on the next episode of Dragon Ball Z. You too can maybe find out what the bumbling is. They'll never know. I know what it is.
Oh my goodness.
I don't think any of them don't. None of them do. I know what it
Someday,
is.
though, just
I'll tell my mods, and only my mods, and the rest of everyone will be kept in the dark.
Has anyone ever gotten really close and you sort of have that heart attack of, oh my gosh, that like they're just a little bit off?
Yeah, no, I've had people use my TTS, and I'm like, that was cringe, Jack. That was incredibly cringe, and I couldn't hit the stop button on it because it was like such a short message. I was like, wow, that was kind of cringe, buddy. And you're like, eh. That's why I've got the mute kill switch for the TTS in case someone
smart
does
thing to
that.
always have, just for troublemakers. Like,
yeah, it's always a smart thing to have, but like most of the time, perfectly fine. It's a good fun time. I've only ever had really like 1 or 2 people misuse it.
And usually that's going to be folks that are like first-time chatters coming in looking to cause trouble.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. It was like you came in, rolled up with a really weird comment in my TTS, and I was like, you could have just not done that, and life would have been so much better if you just didn't make a weird comment.
You had the option to do nothing, and you didn't.
Wizard, you're not a troublemaker. No, like if you're gonna make a weird like sexual comment, maybe not stick it through my cat TTS. That's extra weird, buddy. That's extra weird. That's not comfortable.
So you mentioned Legend of Zelda and Breath of the Wild, and we were talking about the hazards of streaming and manipulating Nintendo games, but in general, I do know you're a Zelda fan, that we are both, as many people are, looking forward to Tears of the Kingdom, which is less than a month away. I have actually avoided the recent trailer.
I have as well. I have only seen the art images, and I wasn't even seeking them out myself. I was just on Twitter.
I actually had muted the word Zelda and TOTK, that I put a 1-week cooldown for both this and the last trailer of just, I want to keep myself as ignorant as possible. I know I'm going to get the game. I want to just go in as blind as possible. And fortunately, for the most part, I've been able to avoid it. That there's a couple that have gotten through, but it doesn't seem like anything too significant. That, surprise, surprise, Ganondorf's going to be in the game. Ooh.
Oh yeah. I did see that, and I was like, oh, well, that was a treat. Thank you. Thank you, Twitter. I will not be spoiling anything else for myself, and I'm like, I'll live with that being my one spoiler.
That is sort of, that's a high level enough thing of, okay, we basically assumed that that's what it's going to be. That there have been plenty of Zelda games that didn't actually have Ganondorf, but it's very rare that you will have a mainline one that doesn't.
Dadendorf.
Well, I'm more excited that it's Matt Mercer playing it because I'm not sure.
Oh yes, I'm very excited. It's Matt Mercer. That makes it better.
The reason that I'm excited isn't just because obviously Matt Mercer, incredibly talented voice actor. For me, it's because this isn't his first time playing Ganondorf.
No,
he did a web series back in the day called There Will Be Brawl, which I adore. And seeing that he posted about it the other day when he said, you know, Nintendo's given me the all clear to actually say this because people recognized his voice in the previous trailer and there was a lot of speculation, and this time he actually confirmed it. But if you look it up, it's called There Will Be Brawl, and it is Matt Mercer a bit over 10 years ago. It's really only available in like 240p. It was on theescapist.com. It's now really only on YouTube, like I said, in this very low crunchy video file. But it's basically combined Sin City with Super Smash Bros. Brawl roster of the main character really is Luigi, but you get at some point in time every Smash Bros. Brawl character, and they weave this really fun, just crime noir tale over a little over 3 hours. It's 10 episodes of varying length, ends up being like 3.5 hours. I highly recommend it. And also just if you want to see Matt Mercer as Ganondorf before he hit it big, that's where I first became aware of him. And then to see him make his foray into voice acting, into tabletop, and, you know, the evolution of Critical Role and everything was super cool. Just like, oh man, I remember that guy from the funny Escapist videos.
I remember that guy from the crunchy internet videos. Look at him go.
And it's been super cool, but to see that actually come full circle for him, that you know it means something on a whole nother level.
I think the role is very important to him, and so I've not spoiled myself for really anything beyond just what the design looks like, and obviously, you know, the actual trailer from the Nintendo Direct. I saw that. I was spoiled with at least that so far, but nothing else that I've been ruined for. I've remained relatively free of spoilers, which is good for me. But I'm really excited to see him actually be in that role because I know it's going to be good. Yeah. I know it's going to be good. There's love put into the character, and there's care. So it's going to be a fun time.
And I'm also excited. That this is the first time, if memory serves, that Ganondorf has been voice acted, at least fully in terms of conversation. That there's been like the grumbles that he had in
I think
Twilight
it's the
Princess,
first time though.
But like full conversation that we really didn't get that prior to Breath of the Wild, and since you know, Calamity Ganon didn't have any dialogue there, that this is going to be that actual first time that we have full conversation. It's going to be interesting to see just how much we get, because we got a uncharacteristically large amount of character development and conversation in Breath of the Wild that we just haven't gotten in previous Zelda games. And to be fair, it still wasn't a ton, but it was a ton in relativity.
It was a ton compared to every other Zelda game, let's be honest. I mean, unless we want to go to the very cursed
we do
game.
not talk about the CDI.
We do. No, we talk about the CDI games.
Join me, Link, and your face will be the greatest in all of Korodai, or you will die.
Excuse me, princess. my favorite, and it was used in every YouTube poop, every single one. And oh god, the CDI Zelda was made for YouTube poops. It was made for it. I feel like that was its purpose. It was born to be that.
Well, Nintendo certainly likes to pretend it doesn't exist, so somebody has to.
Oh, they don't. Listen, that's their ugly redheaded stepchild, and they just want to pretend that it is not there. It is not present. They're like, we didn't do that. That never happened. We're like, I know that happened, and we're going to immortalize it forever with YouTube poop, by the way.
Yep.
It's still, to this day, some of the best material. Next to like Sonic Boom for some reason.
Oh my gosh.
Listen, it's peak, it's good. I very much enjoy Knuckles from that iteration of Sonic, and I will not be ashamed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Tears of the Kingdom, really good. I hope to just lose myself in that game because I've played, I think, every mainline Zelda game starting with Wind Waker, most of the spin-offs, not all of them. But I got to Breath of the Wild late, and I actually picked it up just at the start of the pandemic, actually, because I remember my work transitioned to work from home, and basically the next day that I went to the store and was like, all right, I'm going to get a bunch of grocery stock up, and I'm also going to get a couple of games because I'm probably going to be inside for at least a couple of weeks. And it was like, all right, I've for somehow, been like almost a year late to Breath of the Wild, despite being a very big Zelda fan. It was like, all right, this is great. And goodness, I fell into that game, and just it was wonderful to play through. And I'm really looking forward to starting that day one. And it's going to be the type of thing that if I see folks that I know streaming it, I'm not going to tune into any streams of it until I've beaten the game. So it's just going to be, looking at that Twitch sidebar and like, oh, you're playing Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. Hope you're having fun. No offense, I'm not tuning into you today. It's nothing personal.
Everyone and their mom is going to be playing. I'm probably going to play it myself on stream. I don't know. It might be one of those I keep private. I don't know. There's some games that even though they're super popular, when they came out on release, I like playing them myself. I don't know, because obviously there's nothing wacky programming wise I can do with Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, but just being able to enjoy it at your own pace, being able to take in the environment, not having your attention being split between chat, just getting to lose yourself in that game. And I know that there's plenty of folks that will have those special games that they say, all right, either at the very least for the first playthrough, that I'm not going to do it on stream. Or I know some folks that are just like, this is one of my favorite games and I want to keep it pure, of that, I will play basically anything else on stream, but this one specifically that I replay a lot for myself, I will not stream.
Honestly, I'm still conflicted on this. I don't know if Baten Kaitos is going to be that for me or not. I love the game. It's getting a remaster. Nintendo Direct showed that off. However, it's been a hot minute since I played it. And by a hot minute, it has been over a decade. It's been maybe 15 years at this point. And I don't know if I want to focus on making content with it, or if I just want to enjoy it for the really pure and rare JRPG experience on a GameCube that it was. Because it was one of those very rare GameCube JRPGs. I really enjoyed Baten Kaitos, The Eternal Wings, and The Lost Ocean, and I also enjoyed Origins as well. So I'm super conflicted on if I want to stream those or not, or if I just want to recluse and indulge off stream. Because one of the things is I'm such a busy person, between full-time work and everything else. I don't get to play a lot of games off stream, unless I'm playing them with the homies. But Baten Kaitos, I can't play with anybody.
One-player game.
It's a solitary experience. It's just for me, myself, and I. And I don't know if I want to stream it or not. I'm conflicted. It might be one of those I keep my first playthrough at least to myself, and then do something wacky with it.
Yeah, that was going to be
later.
What I was going to say. Of just, obviously, yourself and your content best. I'm an outsider commenting here. You make your own decisions. My inclination, my thought is that let yourself have that first playthrough and just enjoy it. Let yourself be immersed, make it so you're not distracted at all. And then after you've beaten it once and, to whatever completion level you want, then decide, all right, do you want to play it again? Do you want to have it be something on stream? But I would say, at least for that first playthrough, let it just be for yourself.
I think it might be one of those, because I know I'm going to do Tears of the Kingdom on stream, but I feel like Baten Kaitos might be my thing, because I'm going to go real slow with the game. I'm going to just really absorb the dialogue. It's not going to be one of those fast-paced games I can go through and make my stupid quips or anything. It's going to be something I'm there to really enjoy the story. Much like a lot of Persona games would be really difficult for me to stream, because I'm really focused on the story, because it's 100+ hours of gameplay too.
Yeah, it's just
a long
lot of
game.
Dialogue, and that for me, that I very rarely replay games, at least single-player games. It's just been how I always have been, that even when I was younger, that there's so many different things to play that usually I would rather play something new then replay a one-player experience unless it is something particularly special to me. But even then, it's like I can probably count the number of single-player games that I've replayed on one or two hands at most. But when I play them, I take my time. I will drink in every little aspect. I will fully explore the map. I might not 100% the game, get all the collectibles, but I am going to take my sweet, sweet time just enjoying and going through everything and appreciating the game, knowing, all right, I am not likely to replay this myself, at least in its entirety.
Yeah, that's my same thing. It's been that way for a lot of Final Fantasy games for me. I play it slow, I enjoy the game, and then I'm done.
Yeah, and especially for the longer ones that, you know, it's going to be difficult to reinvest 50, 100 hours in something.
I will say there is Persona games that have kind of like gripped me, and the reason I've replayed those a lot is the different social links and also the endings. That factor engages me a lot. So I've replayed Persona 3, 4, and 5 a lot. 1 and 2 I haven't replayed as much, but I still enjoy them. I just haven't replayed them as much because there's not too much of a reason to, because I know the other ending. Just, you know, I already know what's going to happen, and so there's not too much of a reason. But, you know, with 3, 4, and 5, there is a reason for me to like replay them. Are they long? Yes, but they're also kind of like odd replayable comfort games that I'm fine with doing.
Yeah, that I've only played one Persona game, and that was Persona 5. And going in, knowing my own gameplay habits, that I used a guide for all of the social links and all of the like all of the non-palace stuff.
I don't blame you.
That I knew the complexity and knew, all right, I'm not likely to replay this, so I want to make sure that I have it efficient. And being my first Persona game, I was frankly getting analysis paralysis even in those first couple days, and so I decided pretty quickly, okay, I'm just going to use the guide and I'm not going to look up any spoilers. That it was a spoiler-free guide that just said, you know, talk to Ann on this day, bring her this item, or today you go to Ryuji, and that way it all fit and allowed me to max out all the social links on a single playthrough, but no other details saying go there. But anything in the palaces, I didn't look up any combat guides, didn't look up any you know, monster combination guides, anything like that. I let myself experience and figure that all out on my own, because I knew, all right, at the end of the day, as long as I'm able to get that to the end of the game, I didn't feel the need to collect all the monsters and things. I just cared about the social links. So I had that very clear delineation between, all right, using the guide for this, but only that.
No, that's really smart. I think that's probably one of the best ways to play Persona if you just don't want to end up frustrated and with like a bad ending the first time, unless that's something you actually wanted. I think it's best to use the guide for the most optimal true ending that you can get, and that way you've experienced the game in its most pure form. Whereas if you are interested in the bad endings, I feel like it's sometimes, if you don't want to replay the whole game, watching a playthrough of those.
That's exactly what I'll do. That I
like,
just, you know, look up online. It's like, oh, there's these other endings. Cool. I will watch a YouTube video of these other playthroughs, and that means that I'm investing an hour or so seeing, all right, this is how that plays out. This is that very limited amount of dialogue that I will not hear on my playthrough, but that way I'm not having to spend the 100 hours of a playthrough. But, you know, but if that's what you like, if that is bringing you joy from doing that, you know, more power to you. That's just how I particularly end up going through those games.
They've just been a deep-seated addiction for many years for me. I've been playing them since since 1 came out. So
yeah, I have a lot of friends that swear by that series, and I recognize I'm late to the game on them.
No, I mean, lots of people are still. Like, I know a lot of my friends have never even played a Persona game. So, I mean, 1 and 2 are definitely a different breed. They are definitely more in the vein of like the OG SMT games. They do not have the same kind of like social link and I would say dating aspects, and they don't have the same like quality of life improvements that 3, 4, and 5 do. I enjoy them. 2 is a minefield, and I recommend not playing it on stream. There's some reasons why you shouldn't, and there's a reason why Persona 2 Innocent Sin took so long getting to America. There's many reasons. One really in particular. Yeah. Play that one on your own if you're interested in the OG like Persona games. Don't play it on stream. It's gonna get weird, and not in a good way. Start with Persona 3 if you want to play it on stream and then boot up. I feel like 4 is a really good introductory place because it reaches that sweet spot of not being as morbid of a story. It's still morbid, just like every Persona game. There's a morbid aspect to it, but it's less so, and I feel it's more accessible for people beginning in the series. I feel like 4 is a good entry place.
Yeah,
specifically Persona 4 Golden is a good place to start.
That I knew very little about Persona other than it was a JRPG, and a lot of people had a lot of praise for its characters and its style, and I knew about the social links at a conceptual level. And I figured, all right, it's going to have a good story. I did not realize just how dark it gets. A bit of spoilers here, and I suppose sort of trigger warning that this is for early Persona 5. This is literally the first couple of hours of the game. That when you have a girl jump off the roof of the school, and that is what happens early in the game. You realize, oh, this is going to be very real, and that we're talking about some real and dark issues. And then that's the tip of the iceberg. That's not the big, sort of climactic, third act swerve of things getting dark. It just goes downhill from there.
Yeah, it's something I tell people. If you're not in a mental state to be immersed in something like that, don't play Persona games. You need to be in a good state of mind to be able to not only appreciate the game, but be able to be okay with some of the themes. Because if you're going in and you're thinking that's going to be your pick-me-up JRPG, don't touch it.
Nope.
Do not touch those games, especially 3 and 5, and then also 4 and 1 and 2. Just don't touch them. Just all of them. All of them contain a lot of heavy themes. If you're thinking you're getting away with a Persona game with no death, I hate to inform you, no. All of them have death.
Yeah, and they're good for what they are. And in my opinion, Persona 5 approached a lot of its themes very thoughtfully. And these are dark things, and that they're ones that you're not going to necessarily want to experience in every game you play, and that you should be in the proper mental state to really enjoy media like that. But if that is to your taste and something that you're in a good mental state to consume, that it is indeed superb.
It's a really good series. I've always enjoyed it, but it's not for everybody, and it's not a series that is for every time.
Yeah.
Too. It's definitely not your Animal Crossing. It's not your Final Fantasy. It's not your Harvest Moon. It is not a game you pick up in many regards that uplifts you. It's a game that humbles you in many regards.
Yeah.
So
now
there's that.
I know of Baten Kaitos. I'm aware of the franchise. I have had no experience it with myself. Where does Baten Kaitos fall in that sliding scale of JRPGs?
It's on the lighter side. It definitely does not have the same gravitas to themes that Persona does in any way. It does not have the same magnitude. You in this game, in the Eternal Wings, you are assuming the role of a guardian spirit, which is an unseen avatar essentially for a player, and you're guiding the protagonist and party companions in just an adventure across this floating island kingdom in the clouds. There are, of course, poignant moments in the game, but nothing that's comparable to Persona and some of the other conversations that are revolved around. There's some depressing things, yes, but not too many that I feel really have the same impact. So I feel like if Persona is the furthest, I feel like Baten Kaitos sits kind of squarely in the middle of your standard JRPG, where it's got some deeper topics, but it's not intertwined with the entire game. It's not a pivotal thing for the entire game.
What is it about the game that you've said this is your favorite game, that is very, very definitively, and yet you haven't played it in a decade, so it has endured over that time. What sets it apart for you? That my guess is
So-
at this point there might be an amount of nostalgia attached, but still, it had to have done something to really stick out and create that foothold in your memory.
So for me, it was a lot of the mechanics, because also it was one of the few GameCube JRPGs. There was not a lot of JRPGs for the GameCube. So in the game, you actually like revolve around these magic cards known as Magnus. So the whole thing about the Magnus, like the magic cards in there, they absorb essence of like real world objects for storage and later use. So basically the cards are like containers for items, and there's a sense of odd inventory management with those as well, with your like magic powers. And I also became very attached to like the characters in the game, and it was one of those rare JRPGs, and also I enjoyed playing it. I had a friend that used to watch me play the game, so it does have that odd nostalgia in it. I've always really liked role-playing games. I've really liked them. I was also super at the time obsessed with, like TCG. So there's an aspect prior to battle, if I remember this correctly, and you actually have to assemble a deck of your Magnus cards. So it's kind of like you're almost playing Yu-Gi-Oh, but like it's a really fucked up JRPG Yu-Gi-Oh combination. It's like you just bash them together. And it's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. So you have like weapon cards that you fight with, or armor cards to defend. So you don't have a move set. So you know how most JRPGs you have like moves you select from.
Yeah, actually, so this is a
You
topical one.
have a card deck that
Have
you
you-
select from.
Have you played the Mega Man Battle Network series?
Yes, I have. It's kind of got the same feel to it almost.
Yeah, that's the mental image I'm getting from a lot of what you're describing. That, or I didn't play it through entirely, but I've seen enough of it to know that there might be some similarity to Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories.
And that's been a Kingdom Hearts I have not played.
I've only played Kingdom Hearts 1, half of 2, and like all level of Chain of Memories.
Yeah, I've not played Chain of Memories. I have yet to play that one, but Baten Kaitos has a very interesting game mechanic, and I've yet to see it in many other places employed. And also the other cool thing with the cards, they can change in real time, which was always nifty to me. So you can have like a milk card that could turn into curdled cheese. So there was like, or curdled milk. Yeah, so you could have cards like expire almost in real time if you didn't use them, which is fun.
That's
but also
fascinating.
terrifying. So it's, if you like aspects of like card games and you also are looking for a JRPG that has a world that you get to explore and party members that you acquire, it's a fun play because it also has a good story. So I enjoyed the unique mechanics because at the time there was nothing else like that. There was not a JRPG where you weren't selecting move sets and doing you weren't just doing back and forth combat.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're doing turn-based combat here, but the cards are interesting. And if you selected a crap deck, you're gonna have a bad time. You're gonna have a very bad time. You had to like pre-think about your decks before you went into battle. Like you'd have your standard battle deck for just fighting monsters out in the open, but when it came to bosses,
you had to have a strategy.
If you didn't strat, you were dead. If you did not strat, you were very dead.
I'm going to have to potentially look into that one when the port comes out for the Switch.
Yeah, they're doing the remaster. It was announced on the Direct. So I think it's coming out June, July? Around that time. So it's like mid 2023 is the slotted release for it. So sometime in summer is when we're going to get the port and the remaster.
The game that stuck out to me most in the most recent Nintendo Direct was one of the few that didn't have a release date because it was just it was like a 20-second teaser trailer announcement, and it's a series that I know you've played, and it's one that I don't get to talk about much. But what made me almost tear up was when we got a Professor Layton teaser.
I was like, oh, is that Professor Layton? I was like, oh, I called it. I was like, oh, I called it. I was like, what are they going to serve us next, Professor Layton? Because I was just seeing stuff coming out left and right that just made no sense. I was like, Baten Kaitos, the hell? This came out of left field. And I was like, what are we going to get next, Professor Layton?
That was sort of the theme of that Nintendo Direct, of just, it was, we got a couple new game announcements, but it was just all these old hidden gems, and it felt like there was something for everybody. That obviously, Tears of the Kingdom was the big one that everyone was waiting for and pretty much knew was going to happen during that direct. But the fact that there was such a strong lineup and that it was just there was a lot of these niche cult classic games that it felt like everyone walked away with the Tears of the Kingdom and something else. And to be fair, I don't think Layton is so small that it is a cult classic, but it is one of the more niche franchises. And we have not actually had a mainline Professor Layton game in about a decade now. So to see it come back in this way
nice.
It's really exciting.
I'm excited to see what they do. Obviously, there's not been a lot released on it, and I've also just avoided anything on it because I don't want to be spoiled. I want to go in this fresh because it's been a while since I've replayed any Professor Layton games, and I'm not going to replay anything before I go into this because I kind of want to see it with fresh eyes and then go back almost.
Nine Noni or Nine Noni.
Hey,
hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but hello, thank you for the raid.
Hey.
Welcome on in, Raiders. I'm Jay, this is Vtuber Talk. I'm talking with Radia, and judging from your reaction, Radia, I'm guessing you know Nye.
I do. Hi, Nye. How's it going? Hello, welcome in, Raiders. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, we're just talking about Professor Layton.
Yeah. So have you played that there are 6 mainline games? How many of those main 6 have you played?
I've played all of them. It has just been pretty much since the last one was released that I've played them, and I haven't returned to them because I'm one of those people that I'll play the game and then I won't return to it unless it's something that I'm actively making content with or I really have a deep-seated obsession with, which tends to be like, Pokemon and other games like, right now it's GTFO and Barrow Trauma because I have a problem. I'm fine. I swear I'm fine.
And I will say that Professor Layton games have relatively low replayability because once you know the answer to a puzzle, if you still remember it, it's not going to be the same.
It's too easy.
It's too easy. You're probably going to need, at least a couple years, maybe a decade between playthroughs to hopefully just have those memories deteriorate so you can actually go in and be challenged again. But it is impressive that even after 6 games and having a couple hundred puzzles per, that they continue to have ones that feel good and fresh and thematic. And what sets Professor Layton apart isn't the puzzles, it's the story. That it's those games have no right to elicit the emotional responses that they get. They should not be that good.
When I look at that game, when I picked it up for the DS and stuff, I was like, oh, this will just be a cute little puzzle game. Oh my God, was I wrong?
Even the first one, Curious Village, really hits home at the end, and then you get to Unwound Future.
It's a story that feels like it doesn't belong in a game. It feels like one of those stories.
Much less one that is so cutesy, that art style. It doesn't fit that art style, but it works so well.
It works really well, but it feels like, to me, it's always felt like one of those games where the story belonged in a movie. It felt like it belonged in almost like a full cinematic masterpiece and not in a game, but that also speaks volumes for the game itself.
Yeah, and there has been a Professor Layton movie, and I thought it was very good, and I watched it and said, oh yeah, this could have just been another game. That they basically truncated it, and there were a couple of puzzles that they wove into the world itself, which was pretty nice, but it was only at specific moments where it felt pretty good. But I looked at it and said, this felt like they wanted to make a game but decided to cut a game from their release schedule and make it a movie instead.
No, and I think that might, obviously it's sad we didn't get a game, but I feel like was probably the smarter idea because maybe it allowed them to really flesh something out here in this new game that we're getting. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, and it's certainly been long enough that, and what was really exciting for me is just seeing how many people were excited for it because, like I was saying, it's not a totally unknown franchise, obviously. They're not going to bring it back if they didn't think it was going to get a response, but it was exciting to see just how many people do really know and love that series, even if it is relatively niche.
Yeah, again, it's the same thing with Bot and Kaitos. They wouldn't have bothered with a remaster for both games if it didn't have a cult following, because it does. Same thing with Layton. So I think it will sell well and also hopefully reinvigorate both series, and maybe we'll get more stuff from them in the future. Not crossing my fingers, but hopeful, air quotes. Hopeful, please.
Because Layton has had this side stuff that they had this mobile game, and they had the Katarina game and the Katarina anime, actually, which I watched and was very fun. That half of it was the game made into an anime, but then they added more stuff, and that it hit just as hard as any of the games themselves. But I don't think it ever actually got localized, so I don't know how successful it was really. But seeing Layton himself being brought back is very exciting, and you can imagine that if this does well, that success breeds repetition in business. That's just how it goes. And if this ends up doing well, which I'm now actually pretty optimistic about, that it will probably, hopefully, invigorate another trilogy, or just we'll see where it goes.
I'm excited. I feel like it does have, at least from the response it did elicit, I feel like it does have a fighting chance for getting some more content out of it. Obviously, that'll just depend on game sales and units sold, unfortunately. So hopefully, if people want to see that, they do at least purchase the game in droves. So that's the one factor, which it just comes down to like how much is sold. That's why Pokemon continues on and is allowed to have graphical issues.
Yep. Well, and I think the other sneaky way of why Pokemon is allowed to have graphical issues, mini rant, it's because of the game design, in that it's in a space where the graphical issues don't actually detract from the gameplay. The fact that it's turn-based, if it was real time and you had the type of lag or loading that you had,
God, yeah, no,
it just wouldn't work. The game would be unplayable. But the fact that once you're in battle, you select your move and it's fine, and that traveling can be a little bit clunky, but at the end of the day, the game itself plays perfectly fine. There was no problem in terms of actually being able to get from beginning to end. There's nothing that it makes the game more difficult than it should be. So it is not only the fact that you are probably right, and most people are right, that we do grant Pokemon a greater amount of leeway than we would with the average series. But I think it's also aided by the fact that its gameplay inherently allows them to get away with it, and get away with things that a Mario game couldn't do, that because a Mario game is real-time platforming. So it's a lot of circumstance and those other things that permit those types of things, because by all rights, Scarlet Violet is a very good Pokemon game in everything.
It's really fun. The only thing that keeps
performance.
Yeah, the only thing that kept it back was performance. I thought it was probably the best done Pokemon game story-wise that I've seen in a long time. Maybe next to Black and White, honestly, as far as story went.
And let's face it, Pokemon's never been about the story. It's been about everything else, and that story is gravy. If you can get a good story, that's awesome. And I very much hold up Black and White as one of those gold standards for Pokemon stories, but, that's not what you go to that series for. You gotta
have fun with the immersive world.
Yeah.
And they did a good job with that. Obviously, the performance issues are just, it's a side note, but they did I had fun with the game. I still do have fun with the game. The only qualms I ever have are performance. That's it. That's my one thing, and it always will be.
But you play a lot of Pokemon, that I would go as far to say that it is probably the closest thing that you have to a primary game, that you are a variety streamer at the end of the day, that you will play a lot of different things. I would say that you play Pokemon more than any other individual franchise.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I do a lot with Pokemon. I like doing creative things with it because I think it's fun. It's always been a series I enjoy, and I have a lot of ideas for it. So, and I think it's one of those series that's just fun, and it has a lot of replayability. Yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do with it that make it a good time.
Where does your Pokemon journey begin?
90s.
So, what generation? What was the first Pokemon game?
Gen 1. Gen 1. My dad bought the games, brought them home, and those were my first real handheld games. Was Gen 1, Pokemon Red and Blue. And since then I've been kind of addicted to them. So it's all started because my dad brought home a home console, like little handheld Game Boy, and bought me the games, and those are the first ones I had, and from there on out I was hooked. From the anime to everything else, I just got really obsessed with the entire series. It's never stopped.
That was me as well. That I had friends who had Red and Blue, And for my 7th birthday, I got a Game Boy Color and Pokemon Yellow, and I was in that target demographic. I was at the right age, at the right time. Born too late to land on the moon, born too early to explore the stars, born at the right time to grow up with Pokemon. And that it was, and still is, a big part of just, like my formative years. That I've loved every game and almost fell out between Gens 2 and 3, but then wound up picking it back up. You actually had a short competitive streak in Pokemon, if memory serves.
Just a little bit. It wasn't too long, and most of what I did was either just, was going to tournaments and then doing a lot of like observation. I had always had fun just like watching things go down. I did a little bit of like singles myself, and that was a fun stint. And now I just do it kind of on the side, and I like just, having it in an online space where I'm just kind of like challenging myself and not in any sort of like professional, component where I'm trying to actually win anything in any regard. But I have done a few things way back in the day where it was close to me, and I won't dox myself, yeah. But it was back in like 2012, 2013, 2014 is I had a short stint. I did singles and then I did some double stuff. And that was a fun experience. I miss doing it, but I also don't have the time to. And that's the thing that sucks. I don't have the time to go to like Pokemon battle competitions. I don't have the time. I love watching the stuff live.
Yes.
I love watching people engage in it. So that's how I now engage with the content, is I watch people, because I don't have the ability to like fully prep a competitive team and then go through the brackets. I can't run the gauntlet anymore like I used to, because I just don't have the time. I have like other hobbies now. So I have streaming and stuff and everything else, and that kind of detracts from competitive Pokemon if I wasn't doing it as purely content, which is not what I want to do. So it's something I watch others do. I watch it broadcasted through like the official Twitch channel and stuff, or I watch other creators make their competitive teams, and I kind of just passively absorb that way and enjoy it. Or I'll make, competitive teams and battle in a non like actual, registered competitive setting, and it'll just be with like friends who have made competitive teams now. And I think that's really fun, because you can make a disgusting Klefki, or you could surprise somebody with a doubles Murkrow and make them hate their lives. So there's that.
Yeah, that's very much how I end up interacting with competitive Pokemon. That I play every game, but I've never been into competitive, but I will tune in for Worlds just about every year.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the great things,
Worlds.
Yeah, and that fortunately, competitive Pokemon, if you've played the games, you probably know just about everything you need to know in terms of the building blocks. That you might not have thought of the team builds and comps and whatnot, but it's the type of thing that, all right, you see the Pokemon, you see the moves, and they're moves that you've used. You might not have used them in that combination, but that the barrier to entry in terms of knowledge for competitive Pokemon, if you have played the games just, even in a basic way, as long as you've actually gotten to the Elite Four, you probably know enough to tune into Worlds and understand what's going on.
It's one of those where you can watch competitive Pokemon if you've played the games, as you said, and have a good time watching it. Yu-Gi-Oh is not one of those you can do if you don't know. If you don't know anything about Yu-Gi-Oh and you go in to watch like competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, you gonna be confused. You're gonna be heavily confused, because you can't just like there's
read those
not
paragraphs of text.
Yeah, there's not anything that's going to prep you like outside content wise for a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament if you don't already know what is going on from the perspectives of the card game. However, competitive Pokemon is fun for people that have like watched the show or don't really know too much but have played the games at least, and it can be a fun time, because the best thing about competitive Pokemon is seeing how wacky and creative people get with movesets. I've seen some gross things happen. I've seen some disgusting stuff happen, downright diabolical.
When you get into the concepts of, just like most folks aren't going to think to take Blissey and put Toxic on it and then Seismic Toss. But, as soon as you realize that combination, it's like, oh, wow, that is kind of disgustingly powerful, of just this obscenely tanky Pokemon that is going to say, you are now taking passive damage, increasing every turn, And then when I feel like it, I can also just do a clean 100 points of damage to you,
It's
or
just like
50 or
enjoy.
whatever. Yeah, and then you get things like you were talking about that Murkrow, because of this niche ability that it got, was able to wreak havoc on the competitive scene for a little bit. And that if you weren't really into that scene, you would never know, like, why is this base evolution Pokemon super viable and competitive right now? But then when you see it in practice, it's like, oh, yeah, that makes
I see
perfect
now.
sense.
And it's only competitive in doubles. Like if you can't use it in singles, you got to use it in doubles.
Hmm.
Otherwise it just doesn't have a purpose. And people were like, "Oh, well, I'm using a Murkrow in singles." I'm like, "You can't. You got to use it in doubles. Otherwise, it just doesn't work." Or they're like, "Why is the Murkrow good?" Now you have other strats like recycle, and you have a berry, or you have sturdy, and you can use other disgusting things with that as well. There was facade strats that are utilized as well, all the fun stuff. And I think that's really, really interesting to see what people do. I think it's fun. You can do stuff now on Showdown too, which makes making like almost competitive teams that way
Yeah,
easier as well if you want to just do that.
I love
It's
doing showdown randoms.
Oh, Showdown randoms were a good time. You come across people with a whole team of Shedinja, and you're like, why have you done this to
Yeah,
your
just that whether it's Pokemon or Magic the Gathering, that I don't like constructed play, at least participating. I like watching those types of events, but when you get those really just sort of degenerative strategies, that it's just not necessarily going to be fun to play against. And
it's not.
and
It's
while I enjoy watching high skill players play degenerate strategies against each other and seeing how they handle that, it's not something that I want to play myself. But being able to have the randoms, that feels uh, in its own way a little bit more skill intensive. And yeah, you might get a bad roll on your party, and it just might not line up well against your opponents. But that it never feels like you don't get to play at all because people can't set up something that is truly busted.
Yeah, I like that because I've seen some I've watched some Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments, and it's like you don't get to play at all. It's just this disgustingly busted deck, and I'm like, ugh, that's that's kind of cringe, friend. But at least with the randoms of Showdown, things switch up enough where you do get to have your word in edgewise, which is nice. I've never felt like I've had a bad time. Like sometimes there's someone that comes along and they've just got a real shitter of a team, but it's not been a
Yeah.
mood ruiner for
And
me.
even if you get that, it's like, okay, whatever. I'm going to do another random battle 10 minutes from now with a new team. That it
Yeah, and
doesn't feel like.
it doesn't matter.
And at the very least, you can say, all right, I know you did not intentionally come in here looking to do this degenerate strategy. You got dealt a good hand and you used it. I would do the same.
Yeah, no, I enjoy it a lot, and I also just find it is something that I can kind of like almost shut my brain off and just kind of have a good time with. I
Yeah.
don't need to think about too much with competitive Pokemon. Whereas like anything else, if I started to try and learn Magic again, if I try to learn Yu-Gi-Oh again, that is a constant 40 chess game that I don't know if I'm really
Uh,
ready to play.
we were talking about it just before going live that you've played some Magic the Gathering in the past. I've said several times on the show that I play, but I only play draft and sealed, and that is effectively randoms. That there is
It's the
skill
better
in
way to play
drafting,
it.
there's skill in making a sealed deck of just knowing card evaluation and how to create something with those limited resources, but that you're not going to play against a pure control deck where you just don't get to play, and that maybe you end up paired against somebody who happened to get multiple on-color bombs, but whatever. Yeah, good for you. You got it. But I enjoy, one, the variety of it's just going to be different from event to event, but also that you're always going to have some skill testing gameplay one way or another.
Yeah, and it's why I enjoy different games. I'm varied in the things I enjoy. There's a lot of things I just enjoy watching.
Hmm.
There's a lot of things I enjoy just watching and not like actually being involved in myself, and that's fine.
Are there any
I
things that you really enjoy watching that, my guess is they probably just wouldn't come up on stream a lot because if you're not making content for it, it might not be something. But are there any that really come to mind that you might not even talk about super often, but that you just love enjoying on your own?
So I watch a lot of people who play horror games. I don't play a ton myself. Mostly because I have ADHD and I like focusing on my chat, and horror games tend to distract me from that in general. So I don't play them too often unless they're things like Resident Evil and it's more of like a strategic stealth puzzle horror game where
Hmm.
I can balance all of those things. But I enjoy watching other people do it. And I'm interested to see what they do and like how they make content around horror games. So I have a little bit of a guilty indulgence, and I do watch people play Yu-Gi-Oh because I just don't really play it myself. So I do enjoy watching other content creators play Yu-Gi-Oh and kind of seeing what they do, especially when they explain what's going on. I think that's also kind of nice. So
Oh
I have
yeah.
those, and I really enjoy watching people do art. That's another thing I'll just put on as like a passive brain thing and watch the magic being created that people do. So those are my favorite things to like go around and diddly bop here on Twitch is that, and then other, Pokemon content, of course. I'll pop into that. But I
Hmm.
do enjoy watching horror games because I just don't play them myself that often. So I enjoy seeing others play them. Or um first person shooters I suck butt at, which is like Apex. I'm really stinky at Apex. I'm also really stinky at Destiny, so I enjoy watching people who are good at Destiny play Destiny and actually play it competently and in a way that's fun. I'm not that person. I can't play Destiny and I can't play Apex. I'm not good at them, but I do enjoy watching them every once in a while. So
Yeah, I'm very similar in that regard that I don't play horror. It's not a genre I particularly enjoy, but watching it is much more interesting. It feels sort of like a movie, almost like, watching with the lights on. And similarly as well, I'm garbage at first person shooters. I just never got into them. And now it's sort of too late that, those who know how to play FPSs know how to play, and those skills are transferable to most games in the genre. And that if you're going to try to play online lobbies in any way, shape, or form, you need to know what you're doing, or you're just going to be curb stomped, and that I don't know what I'm doing. So I've just never been into that entire genre, but watching skilled people play, like high-level Overwatch, that's cool. That's really fun to watch. That you don't need to be good at football or even know the intricacies of football to know, all right, if you know what a first down is and what a touchdown is and what a field goal is, you can enjoy watching football. And if you understand, all right, this team got kills on the other team or got the objective from point A to point B, you know enough to watch Overwatch.
yeah, like it's fun to watch people who are skilled at it because it's a skill set I don't have. And then I'm good at like I'm good at like some PvE games and PvP. I'm just not good at what I call fast-paced first-person shooters, and Apex and Destiny fit into those.
Mm.
I'm not good at them. I'm good at GTFO because it's a stealth shooter. And I'm good at stuff like Resident Evil. I'm good at things like COD. I'm good at Halo, but like Halo doesn't have the same pacing as Apex. Never has, never will.
No.
Apex and Destiny are their own weird breed of like reaction shooters and movement that I cannot get. I just can't time it. I just can't do it well. So I enjoy watching it, but I just can't play it well. I'll play it for shits and giggles with friends, but I can't carry.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I mentioned at the top of the show, that you have many, many niche interests, a lot of wacky ones, and that you've said, don't let somebody just let you go to town on random things because you will. So I'm going to invite you to, one, go to town, but also there's a couple that you've even mentioned specifically, like weird chemistry and bacteriophages.
Oh yeah. Bacteriophages are interesting since I've always been interested in, immunology. And one of the things that I learned early on is bacteriophages are really cool. They are viruses that only go after bacteria. So when I was just studying immunology, it was actually one of the things that they were discussing is like, oh, different alternative ways to treat bacterial infections is through bacteriophages, and it's viruses that don't go after any other part of the human body. So you can just inject those suckers and they will go after certain bacterial infections because they are made to kill that bacteria, which has always been super interesting to me. And it's because right now we use broad spectrum antibiotics to treat most things, and that's sometimes not effective. So for really, really, antibiotic resistant infections, that's kind of an interesting thing. And so I'm always been interested in that. There's not too much to talk on them since they are just mere viruses that decide bacteria yummy and that's all they want. But they don't do anything else in the human body system except go after the bacteria. And once that's done, you just excrete them. They don't infect you with anything. They came for what they wanted, which was the bacteria.
These are the good guys.
They came to party and now they're done. And so I think it's interesting to see how we can utilize things in the natural world to treat current issues, especially a lot of antibiotic resistant infections, which do reside within hospitals often. So I've always been interested in that. You know, nuclear history is another one of those weird spots on my like mental radar. So I've talked with my chat before about the ever prominent question of like, no, radiation doesn't make you a superhero, and here's why. And I actually went through why it won't, but how you could, in theory, not in practice, never in practice.
Definitely for legal reasons, not in practice.
For legal reasons, and also it's statistically improbable from every single direction, but you could Bruce Bannerize yourself if you really wanted to, in theory. Like, in theory, you could.
Yeah,
I'm not saying like, you should.
That it would take the perfect alignment of just, you know, I don't know if it's something to do with like frequencies or amounts, but it would take a very specific set of circumstances to get a non-catastrophic result. And yes,
I mean, I can run down. I can run down how it happened.
Go ahead.
In theory. In theory, I can run down how it happens. Because in and of itself, like, ionizing radiation is the thing that damages DNA. And DNA repairs in what is known as like a stochastic process. It's the same thing. Radioactive decay is random. That's kind of the inherent problem with this entire thing that I'm going to go over, is the randomness of it. So with like a sufficient number of atoms, you can calculate the average rate of decay, the half-life, quote, air quotes, can't do hand movement, so pretend those are there. But it's really impossible to predict where any single unstable atom will decay. So this also transfers over to the same process that we're going to talk about with, DNA repair. The random nature of that decay itself, it's a stochastic process. So, random variables that are just indexed in a mathematical set. This means that each of those random variables is uniquely associated with different elements in there. The process of DNA repair itself after being hit with ionizing radiation is that stochastic process. It is random. You don't know how it will repair, what, if base pairs are going to degrade, if things are going to actually form together for a loss of function, or if they're going to, form to be functional again, or just completely deteriorate so they don't function at all. You can estimate the repair of DNA over time, but knowing that future of any singular base or strand and how it repairs is just, it's unknown.
That if that knowledge exists, we do not have it right now. That
we do not.
That the best we know right now is that it is random, and there might be that logical undercurrent or formula. If it exists, we do not know it at this time.
We don't, because there's too many variables to actually target what a singular beam of ionizing radiation would also hit, and then how that would affect it. There's too many variables to actually calculate what would happen. So, like, when DNA is hit with ionizing radiation, there's a couple of pathways it can take. That's also the factor of like why there's so many variables. You can have apoptosis, which is like programmed cell death. You can have cancer, which is the uncontrolled cell cycle, which is just growth of cells. And then you can also have cells become like senescent, which are these weirdly unique cells. And the fact that they just stop multiplying, but they don't die off when they should. So they linger in your body and they cause a bunch of inflammation. And the reason they cause that inflammation is they continue to release chemicals. They're non-functional, but they don't die off. So they keep releasing chemicals that cause inflammation. So you're not going to get superpowers from radiation. I'm so sorry. No one's going to glow. I hate to break everyone's bubble again for like the second time this month. But imagine the statistical improbability of ionizing radiation hitting, first of all, a random part of the body, B, a random cell, C, and then a random part of the DNA that would A, also possibly repair in order to create a beneficial mutation, all without causing cancer or killing the cell and or making them senescent. Also, you need that to reoccur like millions and billions of times.
Multiple times over, and that none of these go awry because
you gotta fudge your rolls. Yeah, you gotta throw the D20 on all of them and hit a nat 20, baby. But like, if you wanted mega cool superpowers, I could suggest to you the very improbable but also super interesting concept of myostatin inhibitors and loss of function in those bad boys, which are, you know, how you can Bruce Bannerize yourself. So, have you ever seen very muscular mice and or the very muscular cow? Have
no,
you
but I
seen
can
the
imagine
image?
them. I have
Okay.
not.
So there's an image of a very buff cow. That is a cow that has myostatin inhibitors that have a loss of function. So myostatin inhibitors are growth differentiation factors, specifically GDF8, and they transform like skeletal muscle. And basically the myostatin inhibitors are to limit skeletal muscle growth. Now, if you have a loss of function, there's no cap. And you can get a really jacked cow or a really jacked mouse or a really jacked human. Babies that have myostatin inhibitor loss of function are buff. They stand sooner. They walk sooner. It's kind of wacky.
Now, if there's no limit, though, doesn't this mean that it can continue to the point where it is
it can become a
damaging?
problem. Yes, it can become very damaging. Obviously, you can have like thickening of the heart muscle, thickening of muscles you don't want. Yeah, that's also an issue. I didn't say this came with no repercussions.
Yeah.
It comes with a lot. So with those like result of the loss of function mutations in the myostatin inhibitors, you can have a dramatic increase in muscle mass, but the overexpression can also lead to like muscle atrophy. So it doesn't come without drawbacks. But if you were somehow able to just billions of times over and over with ionizing radiation, somehow has hit that point on the DNA that contained the myostatin inhibitor gene and it resulted in loss of function every single time, then yeah, sure, you could probably Bruce Bannerize yourself. In theory.
Fuzzy Guy
Not in
person in the
practice.
chat asks, would there be a way to turn these inhibitors back on conceptually?
I mean, you're looking at like epigenetics there and figuring out how to turn on and off genes. So in theory, yeah. In practice, no, not currently. In theory, yes. In practice, no. Like you're looking, when you're talking about turning on and off genes, you're looking at like the epigenome. Like you have your genome and then you have what sits beneath that, which is your epigenome. And that can be influenced, now that we know that, from even your history of your family. Like your epigenome is impacted not just by you, but your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. Certain stressors they went through, like droughts, can turn on and off certain genes. And that can carry over to you, who has not gone through those conditions in 60 years. So there's that. We don't really know fully how all that works. So in theory, yes. In practice, no.
So nuclear physics and genetics are obviously areas of interest for you that, you know, it is your theming. It is your literal brand. Does a lot of your knowledge come from formalized education, or is this just stuff that, you know, you've looked up online or read books and found different things along the way?
Oh, this is formalized. Some of this is formal education. Well, most of it is, because I was a chemical engineer and I did the most regrettable thing any person can do in the history of a work history. I worked for the government. I worked for the government and I did a lot of things with sample analytics, and I worked with radioactive samples. I worked with radioactive material. I did things with Los Alamos. I can't tell you what I did. Can you explain the gap in your resume? I signed an NDA. I'm literally that meme. I signed an NDA. I'm sorry. I can only vaguely tell you what I did and not exactly the full story of what I did. I can tell you I worked with air, tissue, water, and soil samples and processing those. I did mass spectrometer work and I did evaluation of like data and statistics, and I did all of the other prep and whatnot. Beyond that, I have to remain incredibly vague, but that was my area of expertise. Now I'm in a different area of engineering because chemical engineers, fun fact, don't live that long. There's kind of a downfall to working with things like toluene or radium or barium or plutonium or all of that other fun stuff. So, yeah, you know, especially if you're just working in a lab where you are exposed to those fumes on a day-to-day basis, it's not the best thing for you.
Yeah, that, you know, the safety protocols are a thing, and you certainly have things in place that, at least conceptually, that should make it so this isn't a risk, but it's always a risk.
It's always a risk. It's always a risk, and unfortunately, I've worked with stuff that has been disgusting. It's what's called dirty radiation. You don't know exactly where it's coming from. Like, if you look at a radio imaging machine, you know where the radiation is coming from. You know what it is. I know that there, for instance, might be like cobalt-60 pellets, and that is where the radiation is coming from in that machine. I know what it is. When I get a sample from some site, wherever in the world, I don't know what the hell's in there until I analyze it. And if I've been touching it, if I've been near it, if dust kicks up from it, if it's dirt, I don't know what it is. Well, they call it dirty radiation because you don't know the source. It's like a dirty bomb. You don't know what the heck's in there. It's just a bunch of gunk.
Yeah.
So you don't know until you analyze it. Like when I was doing that job, I had glassware that would get bombed out. When you have bombed out glassware, it literally turns your glassware black. Once you're done processing it, the heat adheres a lot of the toxins to the glass. You can't get rid of it. You got to throw out the glass. And they would try so hard because a lot of the apertures are hundreds of dollars, and they would try to have you scrub it out so you can save it.
Work with that budget, and then you're just like, no, this is not coming out. This is
not coming out. I'm so sorry, but I don't think these PCBs are going to come out of this glassware. And that would be a common thing, and you'd have to, you know, you'd be sticking your arms in this water, and it's contaminated. The gloves did not go up far enough to protect all of your skin, so then you're also getting whatever is in the water seeping into your skin.
Nope.
And that's, I mean, there's parts on my arms where I don't sweat anymore because it just damaged the glands. I do not sweat on parts of my arms.
Just conceptually, that's, you know, all right, it's a hot day, and that, you know, you have sweat in this area, and then there's just this gap, and then it restarts a couple inches farther. Oh my.
It's yep, no, that's pretty much what happens.
That must have been a fun thing to realize, because obviously you're not going to realize it in the moment of, oh, you know, my sweat glands are now gone. It had to have been weeks, months later of just, you find yourself sweating and sort of glance and realize, oh, this little segment here.
Oh boy.
Right. Why? Oh, that's probably why.
I didn't start to realize things until probably about 3 years in. Because obviously long-term exposure to radiation in small doses, you're not going to notice things. It's not like acute radiation where you mess with the demon core and now you're like Slatin and you just suffer acute radiation syndrome and start to have problems of slow decay.
This is why going to the doctor and getting x-rays, even if you get x-rays on a fairly regular basis, are not going to have adverse effects.
No, but when you are every day being exposed to, you know, dust with materials in it, water, you know, air that has it in it, because, you know, highly chlorinated PCBs are airborne. You're breathing that in. There's no way to not breathe it in because it's everywhere. Once you're in a lab like that, be aware that everything has been coated in that material, all of it, like everything. Nothing is safe. The rad room that I worked in was not a closed ventilation system either. That was an inherent fault of the building.
Oh no.
They did, yeah, that's legally, it was not, that was an issue.
That is what we call not up to code.
No, it was not OSHA approved. But it was never an area that was actually investigated. So
because it was an area that required NDAs, so the folks that had to investigate it probably, it's more difficult to get inspections when you need an NDA to walk into the room.
Yeah, and it's also like when you have the OSHA investigator, they don't really so they miss a lot of stuff. So if you're not mentioning aspects of that, it's not happening. A lot of it is just general walkthrough of the lab and then looking at documentation and safety protocol of the most visible things.
Yeah,
A lot
it
of the
says here
stuff
that
that's
you have these
unseen.
precautions. It says here that you have these pieces in place, in theory.
In theory, not in practice, and that's been the issue. In theory, not in practice. There's a lot of oversight. Yeah, no, I've told people stuff is coming Coleman coolers through the mail. It's not nice. It's gross. And then I send those coolers back, or did, to be reused again for sample, shipment. Like, you see something. It's literally a Coleman cooler. It's not lead lined. It doesn't have nickel in it. And they don't do like sample analysis. They collect these samples, they put labels on them from the sites, there's site codes and stuff, and then they just send it to you, and you are the one that does the analytics work. You don't know what's in it until you know what's in it. And that is days later sometimes, and you're like, oh, that's gross.
Oh,
that was
so
really
I was
gross.
handling this for however many hours.
Mhm.
Lovely.
You're like, so, oh, that had radium in it? Ooh, boy. Boy, howdy, do I love some radium.
That's why I was all tingly that evening.
It's like the most, like, I guess, like on demand responses I've gotten from things has mostly been like rashes, or it's been nausea or lightheadedness when I was working there. I have long-term effects from it, obviously, but in the moment effects was like nausea, was lightheadedness, or it was memory issues or things of that nature, which just happen. And I didn't know it at the time. I didn't think it was that, because your first thought process is not, oh boy, radiation
Yeah, it
poisoning.
might just be, oh gosh, maybe I didn't sleep that well last night, or maybe I'm a little dehydrated today.
Yeah, because I mean, I was working 12-hour shifts in a lab that had no windows, also for security reasons. So I'm going in there, it's dark in the morning. I'm going out, it's dark. Obviously that I just attribute everything to, I'm tired. I was not tired, just tired.
So you are no longer in that line of work.
Thank goodness.
But obviously it still occupies just that area of interest for you, even if it's not necessarily what you do as your day to day.
It is. It's always interesting. Like, nuclear history is interesting. Nuclear power is interesting. A lot of the mishandling of like nuclear material is interesting. All that stuff it's fascinating. I think it's important to learn about it because not a lot of people know about it, let alone all of the repercussions around how it does affect your daily life or the things that happen with it. The fact that like there are orphan sources that happen every day in the US. There's constant weird existential crises with revolving around nuclear items. So
like maybe the path for you isn't actively working with them. Like maybe your path is in some sort of like prevention or like safety development. I don't know.
Like there are, like with hazardous waste, there's tons of safe ways to hold that and dispose of it. We've already figured that out as far as like an engineering thing. What we haven't really figured out is human error, and I don't think we ever will. That's the unfortunate thing, is human error and human negligence
Yes.
really is what messes so much up. In my case, it was human negligence, and not on my part, but negligence from working in a situation you can't really fully control because it's not something you control beyond doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
The radiation teacher.
Yeah, that it then just becomes, all right, what technology can we develop to address the negligence after the fact? That, what sort of cleanup can we do, or, that how can we make sure that folks who get exposed to this type of stuff are able to minimize the impact, like maybe even hopefully reverse it, though that again is a very difficult thing, I would assume, conceptually.
Yeah, it's because there's two things. There's two pathways for exposure to radiation, and how it affects a body. There's ARS, which is acute radiation syndrome, and there's CRS, which is chronic radiation syndrome. CRS is long-term exposure, and you can deal with it. And by I mean deal with it, you can use organ supporting drugs that mimic the function that you have lost. You're not really viable for transplants, to be honest, because your DNA keeps falling into
It's gonna be
disrepair.
funky.
Yeah, well, you start losing things like ability to produce red blood cells, white blood cells, certain enzymes you lose the ability to produce. Like you don't know until things start going downhill and you start having like organ issues, like your pancreas
Yeah,
doesn't work or all the other stuff that should function just starts to
just,
not function
oh,
for
this is
not a good
gone
reason.
wrong. That you can't feel it going wrong until it has gone wrong, until there are those problems, and then it's, like you said, that even repair and replacement might not be viable depending on genetics, and that just
Well, usually if you have a problem like that, depending on the severity, they might not even consider you for that. They might see that as a wasted organ because there's not a lot of organs, to be honest.
yeah, that
So if they're looking at someone who needs a kidney, I personally wouldn't look at the person who's been irradiated and go, yeah, that'll do. I would go to the other person who hasn't.
mhm,
As bad as that sounds, it is a factor because
yeah,
you do have to look at that organ being non-functional relatively soon, as opposed to someone else who has a healthy body,
yeah.
besides needing that organ. So it brings with it a lot of treatment complications. Obviously, acute radiation syndrome, you don't come back from that one really, except in marginal chances. And by marginal, I mean like the smallest percent. That's usually not a situation that you come back from. CRS, you can treat and you can live a life with it. It's just difficult and it's just hard. There's not a lot of special like targeted treatments for it. There's stem cell therapy, there's organ replacement, there is stuff like plasmapheresis, which is basically like full body dialysis but for plasma. So you're rolling a 99 on the D100
Yeah.
pretty much.
Are there any games or shows, or just like, is there any media that isn't like pure nonfiction that you feel has portrayed nuclear chemistry particularly well?
I feel like the most recent show that's done a good job is
'Cause
probably Chernobyl. Unfortunately, it has inaccuracies, but it's probably the best depiction I've seen.
yeah, and that one I consider pseudo historical, because while it may be
Yeah,
dramatized, that it is in
it's
large
still
part based on true events.
yeah, it's still in line with the true events and it still follows it. Obviously, it has dramatizations just like everything else
Yeah,
is dramatized to some relative degree. If you're making a TV show, you've got to put in the cinematic legwork to obviously make that interesting. It's not a pure
yeah,
documentary. Like there's a lot of docuseries that are very interesting. If you're looking for docuseries on YouTube, Kyle Hill's a good one. There's a couple of others that if I can remember, I can recommend. I've got like a whole playlist that are just, if you're interested in that stuff and you want like a bite-sized introduction to stuff, it's interesting. But as far as like shows, if you're looking for something that's digestible to, I would say, the average layperson, Chernobyl's a good one. If you've ever been curious about what happened with the reactors and how the reactor melted down, it's a good one to watch. Obviously, take it with a grain of salt when it comes to some of the dramatizations, and I would also do supplementary reading, but it's a good watch. It's still a good watch.
is there any pure fiction that you feel has, whether by accident or perhaps just by having somebody with that knowledge on the writing team, that has portrayed that type of stuff particularly accurately, something that is not at all based on historical events?
Oh, not on historical events. Hmm. I actually don't know of one recently because all of them have been relatively historical events. I guess there's aspects to Fallout that are kind of interesting, but you can't really take them with any degree of like scientific sincerity. But it's still a fun game that has those aspects built into it. So I can't think of anyone where I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's gotten it down to a T. because it hasn't in a lot of regards, because they do talk about like, oh, people were mutated by the radiation. I'm like, it's not that easy. So that's a like brain conflict there. I'm like, it's not that simple. It's not that easy. So there's not one I can think of where it's been pure fiction that hasn't used historical basis to formulate a better story or a better like scientific context around it. Most of them have, to some relative degree, taken inspiration. Even if it's thinly veiled, they've still taken inspiration from like SL1 or 3 Mile Island or Fukushima Daiichi or any other, you know, multiple nuclear accidents like the Guyana incident. So all that stuff. Yeah, no, Spider-Man is not real, unfortunately. I hate to say.
Aww.
That's always been one that's like, oh, so you can't get bit by the radioactive spider and just become superhuman? No.
No, that spider is very likely to die before it has a chance to get to
that
you.
That spider's probably got ARS. Who the hell are we kidding? No, there's not one I can think of. I would love to see one day, but it's also very hard. I feel like to build into a game or even into a show.
Yeah,
and explain all of the scientific intricacies of like because you have to go into like nuclear physics. Let's be honest, that's kind of boring to the average person. Because like if I'm gonna make something about the demon core, no one really wants to probably hear about like a subcritical sphere going critical, like reaching critical mass. No one probably wants to like listen to what that means. They're gonna want to see the showmanship of the demon core and like, oh, you know, the actual slipping of the brick or the, you know, Slotin slipping and, you know, as he lifted down with his hand the reflective beryllium sphere as he just micrometers away with the flat tip screwdriver and it just...
Initially, when you first said the demon core earlier, I thought that was like a reference to a game. I'm now realizing this is not.
No, it's not. So the demon core itself, like if I'm just gonna go,
sounds like something out of fiction. It sounds like out of a bad anime or something.
Do you want to know what its original name was? Its original code name? Because
I'm sure it was something really mundane.
Rufus. Yeah, that's right. The demon core was originally called Rufus. So the reason it's called the demon core, you know, got the moniker the demon core, is it killed 2 scientists back to back. And really the core was not at fault. Let's be honest. It was the overzealous confidence of 2 men who thought that they could play with fire. And by play with fire, I mean play with a mass of radioactive material and get it closer and closer to being super critical. It's not something you should do at all. Especially with your hand in a screwdriver or with, you know, you shouldn't.
So they were were they literally poking this?
They were, as one would say, they were just poking a dragon. As one
poking the bear. The bear is a radioactive core.
Yeah, listen, the smartest dumb people you know wield a screwdriver. That's basically the story of the demon core. So in 1946 is where this started. Well, didn't start. It started before then. 1946 is where the core was finally retired and it's been accepted back into, you know, America's nuclear stockpile. And since there's never been any reason for deployment of nuclear weaponry since, there it sits. But it was a 6.2 kilograms, so like 14 some odd pound metallic sphere. It's called the demon core, as I said, led to the death of 2 men. So both of the bombs that were utilized in World War II, Little Boy and Fat Man, the cores themselves are actually small enough for you to hold. Obviously, you don't want to hold them because they're radioactive material. So you have like actual containment units to carry them around in. This was the third one
here.
This was the third one. Rufus, aka the demon core, was never used. So it ended up going to Los Alamos. On their own, all of these spheres are subcritical masses of nuclear material. No nuclear reaction can occur with spheres alone. It can't happen. Even the nickel plating covering those spheres, it protects you from most radiation. The real harm with any of those radioactive spheres comes from actually when that core goes critical. And so to make that core go critical, they use it artificially with explosions. They induce that criticality, trying to speak English anymore, with explosions. So you basically want to compress a uranium and or plutonium sphere, pick your poison, into a smaller volume. So once that sphere itself is compressed, you get a really, really fun reaction. And by fun, I mean devastating on like an energy scale. So you're going to have neutrons that are just emitted from that. And that's just, there's natural radioactivity from those. But when you have that explosion happen, there's a cascading reaction of more and more atoms that release that tremendous amount of energy. So you have neutrons that just end up slamming more neutrons free from other atoms, and that's where your blast happens. That's where it reaches criticality. That core is that radioactive core is the source of any atomic blast. And it's kind of poised almost like a spring trap, if you think. I guess a good way to think it is if you've ever seen like chip clips, that's a good one. Like if you've ever seen a chip clip and you've seen the spring in a chip clip just kind of like ping out, that's what happens when something goes super critical. Is it just shoots out, it just pings on out. Mousetrap is another good example of that. You know, the fake potato chip cans with snakes in it, those are another good example of like that happening. But think of it if it just exploded. Yeah, think of if it just exploded instead. Think of that. So what kind of happens with a radioactive core with no imminent purpose? Well, it goes to her research, and that's what happened with the demon core. There are two ways to make a core go critical. First one is that natural emittance that I talked about, and the second one is what happened at Los Alamos, which is criticality can be forced by having some nice thick material that reflects the neutrons upon itself, and that is where a self-sustaining reaction occurs with, and you can actually even have with this one, less plutonium or less uranium, which is in terms of weaponry enticing because you don't have to get as much of the resource, right, as much of the material. So at Los Alamos in the 40s, the objective was to test both uranium and plutonium to see, and this is dumb, they did it the dumb way, how close you could get to criticality without explosives or reaching supercritical mass. So they were...
yes, the experiment of how close can we get to going wrong without realizing that obviously the logical end of this experiment.
How close can we get to making a bomb explode without making a bomb explode? This is basically, you know, how close can I make a car crash happen? And there are huge risks to these experiments. One of the people from the Manhattan Project, actually, Richard Feynman, had a quote, and it lives kind of in infamy. They said they were tickling the tail of a sleeping dragon, and that it would eventually breathe fire on them in one way or another. Yeah, in under 2 years, these neutron radiation experiments, or reflection experiments, 2 scientists were claimed, much due to their own hubris. Wasn't hard to see. The first one actually was Harry Daglin, and he dropped a brick of tungsten carbide onto the core. And you can imagine...
So this wasn't... And so here we get to your human error.
This is human error. This is not even like a machine was controlling this, because there was no mechanics involved in this. This was human hands.
But also the sheer audacity to let an experiment of this sensitivity be handled by human hands.
Well, it was the 40s, and also, listen, much to our timeline of nuclear history, it's not that long. Let's be honest. We haven't had nuclear weapons that long. We've had them for like 70 plus years. Nuclear history in and of itself is not something that's been around for a long time. So this was, I hate to say it, expected. The foolishness and improper precautions were expected in
frankly,
many
we're
regards.
just lucky that it only went as bad as it went.
We're lucky it was an isolated. And we're lucky this was not a test with explosives, because it would have been an actual full-on nuclear bomb. We're lucky that the brick was taken off in time. We're lucky that the actual, like, again, with Slotin, the core was lifted. We're lucky that these weren't situations that could have been far worse than they were. But both of these just initiated uncontrolled chain reactions, which just produce a burst of ionizing radiation. Both of the men, in both cases, receive fatal doses. You don't live from being hit with 1,000+ rems of radiation. That's just not possible.
Now, is this something that, like, they, like, keeled over on site, or was this something that, you know, a couple days later or a couple years later?
25+ days of probably the most unimaginable human terror that one could experience, because it's not a fast death. Even with acute radiation syndrome, unless you have been so close to a nuclear blast that you've been vaporized, or, you know, and that's not even acute radiation, you're just vaporized. Something where you would die within hours, you need more REMs than just 1,000. They got enough to where it was fatal. They lived 25 days. Obviously, some of that was still with hospital interference, but it's the worst way to go because your body stops being able to repair cells. Your skin sloughs off. You can't absorb nutrients. All of this stuff.
It is the most painful and drawn out 25 days.
It's not the way anyone wants to go. Obtuse radiation. Oh no. There's not obtuse radiation sickness. So both of the men died in similar ways. They both dropped. One dropped a brick. Slotin dropped a screwdriver. Admittedly, Slotin was also way more confident in his abilities than he should have, because he would lower the reflective beryllium sphere with his bare hand down the core. So you imagine, if you can, like, picture it. He's leaning over it, and he has a screwdriver that just fits into the opening, and that is the space between that sphere hitting the core. And that is the hairline, like between
a fork into an electrical outlet.
Yes, it is. And the other thing with this is, unfortunately, Daglin was alone. He decided to go back into the lab that night, and that's when he dropped the brick. He was alone. Slotin wasn't. There was 7 other people there. And immediately after that happened, he handed them a piece of chalk. And each one of them had to mark where they were, and he calculated how long they had left to live, essentially, based on radiation exposure. And if that's not the most harrowing shit you've ever heard, I don't know what is. Yeah, no, your mortality's been calced right in front of you, and that is disturbing because you don't feel the effects of radiation right away. It takes a few hours to set in, and it just, depending on the person, results in like all sorts of fun things like vomiting or nausea or memory loss or fever, all that, rashes. It's not insidious at first. Unless you know what happened, then it's the most insidious thing, and you have to just watch it play out. There's nothing that can save you from that. There's no medical techniques we have that are going to bring someone back from that amount of radiation exposure. You just have to stay the course. If somehow you manage to pull through, incredible on a statistical level, but improbable.
And we've had this happy, cheerful, relaxing Pokemon music playing in the background the whole time.
Oh my god. That's one hell of a juxtaposition right there. Yep. But no, it was
This is a learning lesson, folks. This is, story time with Radia.
Story
Don't play
time
with nuclear
demon.
material. Don't actively agitate radioactive material.
You shouldn't. Don't. I get that in the early days of experimentation, we didn't know any. Let's be honest. You should have known better.
Yeah, no,
Other
it's just
people,
this very much.
Richard knew better. Richard was like, "Oh hell no."
Yeah,
Oh
this
hell
is
no.
very. This feels like I said, putting a fork in an electrical socket of just like a stupid child, frankly, of just, how can you be so smart, so educated, so experienced that you have access to this facility and are trusted with the material, and just like, what has to go through their mind to think this won't end poorly? That this
Can I
is
tell you
okay.
what does?
Human
Can I tell you what
stupidity.
does?
Yeah.
Ego, overconfidence, the ability to not believe that you are capable of such a grievous error when in fact all it takes is a little bit of sweat on your palms to make that error. Some people don't want to face that fact. Some scientists, and I say this for a lot of people, are the smartest dumb people I have ever met, and that goes for me as well. Some of us are the smartest dumb people you'll ever meet, because sometimes we keep going when we should stop. Chernobyl's a great example of things that could have just stopped, and it would have been fine. If things had just stopped when they initially happened, we could have avoided a lot. This is another example of things that should have never happened in terms of protocol, but happened.
Yeah.
Yippee. Well, at least now you can rest assured that the plutonium core has been, now melted down for the U.S. nuclear stockpile. So originally it was planned to be sent to
Yay.
Bikini Atoll, but it wasn't. So it would have been publicly detonated, which would have been, maybe more fun. Who knows? It would have been a transient kind of fun, but, now it's melted down and it just sits there forever and ever and ever. And
Yay,
mocking people
half-lives.
whose hubris has taken the best of them.
But it got the badass name, the Demon Core.
It did, and it's slightly better than Rufus, admittedly.
Yep. Oh, goodness. Well, we've already been at it for almost 3.5 hours, and I know that, we could end up talking all night, but I don't want to keep you forever and ever.
I could talk so much more. You like Rufus more? Oh,
Like, I haven't even really set you off, frankly, of like, in terms of the niche things that we wound up covering a lot of the big topics, and we went pretty deep on those big topics. I didn't even really poke this particular bear of getting into the weird stuff. So if you want to get the weird stuff, you're going to have to tune into Radia's streams, because she will just talk your ear off about anything that she can or cannot think of, or that gets placed in her mind by perhaps a mischievous chat member.
true. I could tell them all about how a bear almost caused World War III. That's a great story.
Yeah,
That's
you were
always
telling me that right before we went live, but you'll have to get that on her stream.
You'll have to get the bear story sometime. If it's not an unbearable event for you to achieve, you can come by. It's an unbearable bear of a battle.
Also, I'm realizing your notifications are actually live on here.
Oh, are they? Oh, there they go.
I brought up your chat for me because I was like, all right, are the redeems active? And sadly, you do not have your redeems active when you're not live. Otherwise, I was going to like bring you into your gremlin mode, give you red eyes, do other things. But yes, go on over, give Radia a follow that I gave her a shout out right here. If you're interested, you can follow me here. Oh, uh-oh. Oh no, I summoned it.
Hello.
Hell.
Hi. Yeah, they're not up when I'm live, but like, yeah, I forgot that this, when you said background, I hadn't taken everything else off the scene, so I was like,
No,
oh,
you're good.
it's still here.
No, that's fine. That some of the funniest moments have come from when somebody has actually had those live and just not realized it.
Oh, no.
Which is part of why I tried to instigate it myself. Only, you had the actual toggle off that people can't waste their points when you're off air.
Yeah, so they don't do the thing, and I don't wake up and I'm like, oh God, what happened today? What happened? What were they doing last night?
Wait, did I like sleep stream last night? I've heard of sleepwalking. Did I wake up and, hit the go live button?
I
Gotta go check the VOD.
I would hope I never sleep stream. God, that'd be a mess.
I feel like statistically that has to happen at some point.
I'm sure someone has done. I'm sure someone has done it. There's got to
Statistically.
be somebody out there that's done it.
That it becomes such a reflexive thing, and that people do strange things when sleepwalking, that people have had conversations sleepwalking. I have to
brother
believe someone's
sleepwalks.
done that.
my brother sleepwalks, and he used to go in and take a shower, but he'd have all his like night clothes on, so he
Oh,
just become
no.
soaked, and then he would go lay back down in his bed,
Wait,
and he would just be,
And so the water
yeah.
would not wake him up? That he wouldn't?
No, 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 no. It would not
That's
wake him up. He'd also try and go outside, which was also not good. So that was an experience. But no, he would go in the shower, or he would try and go outside, or he would also go into the living room and like sit on the couch, but just sit on the couch like actively. Was very disturbing, honestly. Living with a sibling who sleepwalks,
Oh my
or
goodness.
he would knock on my door, and I'd go there, and I'm like, "Hey, bud," and he's no response. I'm like, "You okay?" And he's like, "No noise." Then he just turns around and goes away. I'm like, "Oh, that's discerning there. Oh, I don't like that."
The first time that happens,
that.
that has to be like, is something very wrong. And then every time after, just, okay, all right, going back to bed, buddy.
Go on back. The first time it happened with my dad found him in the shower, and he was like, "You doing okay?" No response. "You doing okay?"
It's like,
No,
no,
no response.
Is he
Like,
high? Is he on something?
my dad thought he was blitzed out of his mind, because he's like he's a high school. He thought he was just blitzed, and I was home from university, and he thought my brother was just out there on cloud 9. No, he was not.
Just sleepwalking.
Just sleepwalking. You're like, no, he was full on wizard in the shower with clothes. Like, no. He would step out soaked, and it was really bad because we had carpet, and the carpet would be wet.
No.
And then he would go lay on his bed, and
Bed,
he ruined
and then
mattresses because of that.
Waking up the next morning must have been real confusing.
It was definitely, well, the thing is, like, before my dad knew what to do, he would actually wake him up. Which is, I guess you're not supposed to do that with sleepwalking people. But my
Also,
dad
at the same time, like if you're going
better
to sleep in wet clothes, like you can get sick like that.
You can. Yeah. It's also a great way to ruin mattresses again and again and again.
Yeah.
So there is that.
Yeah, that feels like a situation where, if you can delicately do so. Well, I just heard something crack.
That was my neck.
Hopefully that was not too painful. Hopefully that was a good one.
It felt a certain way. It felt a certain way. Indeed it did.
But yeah, see how easy it is to just get her rambling on something? I was trying to off-ramp us.
I'm sorry, I have ADHD.
No. Hey, no, you're good. You're good. So I have 2 last questions that I asked all my guests. First off, do you have any goals left for 2023? If I had asked this a week or 2 ago, I would have expected that one of the goals would have been reaching partner because you've been on a partner push. I noticed a little purple check mark next to your name recently.
Yeah, I've had that for like 30 weeks now, something like that.
Okay, because I think I saw it on your schedule like as soon as this week. Maybe I'm confusing things.
No, I first got it on March something. It was like late March I got it, and it was before my birthday. So
I might have been thinking of the schedule that you posted when we had the initial scheduling of the show.
Yeah. That was the one. That was the one, because you that one was still up. I hadn't like deleted it or anything. It was just down there in my tweet scroll, whatever I call that. So it was down there. But no, I got this in March, like mid-March, as I was playing League of Legends. So yeah, there's that.
So was it on air that you got the email?
No. I was playing League with the homies, and I didn't get the email. I got a notification, and I had like drank a bit of a White Claw, and I was like, "What's that? What's that there?" And I was like, what's that? Yeah, it was like 2 a.m. too.
Oh my gosh.
And I was playing League of Legends like a cringe gamer. And I opened it up and I was like, "Oh, is that another update for Twitch? Do I need to sign something?" And so I went in there. I was like, okay. I sign it. And I was like, "I'm back. I'm ready to play more League again."
Oh, you didn't even realize what it was, and you went on and accepted the agreement without quite realizing.
I didn't know. I didn't know. And then I typed in my homie's chat because he was live.
Oh.
And I was like, "What the hell's that?" I was like, what's that? What's that by my name?
Wait a minute. I know what that little icon is.
I was like, wait a minute. I was like, did I get a partner? I was like, I'm too busy playing League of Legends. I'll care about that later. I was like, did I get a partner?
Accidentally accepted partner. Oops.
I was like, oopsies. I went back and I read everything after. Obviously, you know, for legal purposes, I did that. But you know, I was like, haha, League of Legends. I thought it was a Twitch update. I thought it was a because they never sent me an email. I went back and I looked. They never sent me a Twitch partner email.
Spam folder, maybe?
No, they didn't. Not a singular Twitch partner. No, there was not one. It came in my notifications board. That's where it came up. I saw it in my notice board, like where you get your like subs. If someone's gifted you a sub. I saw it there. That's where I saw it.
I've never heard of that happening before.
I did not get an email. I didn't see a Twitch email, not in my spam, not in my promos. I didn't see it in my inbox.
So maybe you got it and just sort of deleted, you know, see something from Twitch. I never have to read these emails from Twitch, just sort of deleted on impulse.
I don't think so, but I never saw it. Well, I got the badge.
You got it.
It's there on my profile. They somehow found me worthy of it.
Ta-da! So, all right, so you've accomplished that goal. Do you have any other goals for the rest of the year, whether it be, you know, like a project or something that you want to do with your programming?
I do. This year with programming, I really want to do a lot of stuff with actually making gameplay super interesting and doing it my own way, which is where the programming comes into place, and also releasing that as YouTube videos and content over there. And as far as stream, I'm pretty content. I've got an awesome community, so as long as it continues like this, I'm really happy. I can't like really say how happy I am, because I'm just very happy with everything. So I get a platform where I get to do my weird stuff, and everything else is just gravy at this point. Goals, I don't really have any number goals or anything. Would love to reach YouTube partner, but that's not like anything I'm super stressed over. I'm just here to make good content at the end of the day and amuse the people that do come and watch me and enjoy my little gremlin self with my silly little brain.
Yeah. And then the last question I ask all my guests is, what does being a VTuber mean to you? And that's not what is the definition of a VTuber, but different people get different things from VTubing. Some folks have said, you know, it lets me get in touch with my inner child, or it lets me be someone I can't be in real life. Others have had sort of a clinical approach of, you know, we talked a lot about the tools of VTubing earlier, and they said, you know, I love the toolkit that it allows me, that I wouldn't want to be a facecam streamer because being a VTuber lets me be more creative in this way, and that it lets me be the performer I want to be. And, you know, both ends of that spectrum and in between and beyond are valid, but different people have those different answers. So for you, Radia, what does being a VTuber mean to you? Well,
at the end of the day, like for me, it's always meant being someone who builds a community and also makes, at the end of the day, just I like making people happy. So if I can make people happy with what I do and just being me, then that kind of what is being a VTuber is. It's through a digital medium, obviously, and I use this avatar, but making good content, making people happy, making a place where people just get to have a fun time, because let's be honest, the world kind of do suck sometimes. And by sometimes, I mean, it kind of suck a lot. So being able to create that in any way, shape, or form every day is important to me. That's what being a VTuber is. Whether I'm breaking boundaries or I'm creating different mediums or I'm doing weird stuff, that's included in it. Obviously, it's sometimes not foundational, but it's included in it. I like being able to help people. I like being able to spread my wisdom where it is. I don't really gatekeep anything. If someone has a question about programming, if I can tell you, I will. If I could help you, I will. Goodness gracious, I've sat in many calls. So it kind of extends to all that, is making lives a little bit better in the way that I can, even if it's a very weird, eclectic way. So that's what is for me.
I always ask that at the end of the show because, one, it sort of helps put a bow on things, but also, even after talking for someone for just a couple of hours, the answers I get always make sense, and that for you, that, you know, you're here for fun, for a good time, and so that answer,
I'm here to party.
Here to do crazy things, talk about niche topics, and be a little gremlin along the way.
Yeah. I do not gatekeep my mods in the basement. I gave you all Kraft macaroni and cheese ice cream. Don't complain anymore. I gave you something different.
She gave you the good stuff.
I gave you the good stuff. I gave you the good stuff. Yeah. Don't complain. But no, it's it's really fun being able to do this. This is a medium I feel comfortable in. And people have told me like I make their day better. So that's all I need, honestly. It means a lot. It really does. Like I think people underestimate how much that means as a compliment to a content creator. It means the world. It's like they're like, I come here because I like listening to you while I'm working or I relax, or I'm just like, you make me happy. And I'm like, I'm glad I can do that. That's all I want to do. At the end of the day, if you find just inherent joy from inhabiting the space I made, with the help of my community, I'm good. I'm happy. I did my job.
Yeah.
I did my job.
And if
Can you get some mac and cheese? No, wizard.
No.
You're not allowed. Only the mods. Only the mods.
Only the mods.
Only the mods. Not you. Maybe tomorrow.
Maybe. Definitely not.
You come from Bingus. He is a bonus. Yes. I'm glad I get to share him, and people love him. I'm glad
Yes.
I'm glad I get to share my cat.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we've been at this now over 3.5 hours. So do you actually have someone that you'd like us to raid? While she looks around for raid target, I'll take care of some last housekeeping things. Again, thank you all in chat for stopping by, whether you've been here since the start or got in somewhere along the line. Do be sure to follow Radia, that she should be tagged in the description. Her links will be in the video description for the YouTube VOD after the fact. Hi, YouTube. If you made it to the end of the show, thanks. Like and subscribe and all that jazz.
Hi, YouTube.
Yeah.
Hello. Like and subscribe, as my TTS would say.
And if you're interested, you can follow me here on Twitch and Twitter. It's Vtuber Talk, both places. I can't promise any regularity in my streaming schedule because I try and schedule the shows around the guests, but I do these about once a week. So if you had a good time, feel free to stop by again. And if not, that you will probably see me in Radia's chat. That I don't invite folks on the show unless I'm actually a fan of their content, that I enjoy their stuff, and that the whole thing, that there is no science or real method behind how I choose my guests. That what I do is I just hop around Twitch and I go into channels and I watch and I sit around and say, one, am I having a good time? And two, do I think I could carry a conversation with this person for a couple hours? That's it. It is so simple. And just, like I said, when we met, there was like, one, I could tell you had a pretty good personality just from initial interactions, but then afterwards, tuning into stream or two, that it was like, okay, yeah, this is a layup here. And this has been so much fun tonight. So thank you so much for stopping by. We're going to be rating into It's Apple Milk.
Yeah, Apple's super sweet and also an amazing artist. I had so much fun. Thank you for having me on. I'm always happy to come back. If you want a real nuclear history lesson on super weird stuff, I can tell you about all of the orphan sources the world has to offer, and so many mistakes that have been made. Ayo.
Oh my goodness. Well, I always invite everybody back for my charity marathons. That one's going to be a little far off because those are in January. But you'll definitely be hearing from me for that, and we can... I'm sure we can figure out some little game or segment for the orphan sources of nuclear material, because goodness knows I'm not going to get that conversation with anybody else. That's part of the fun for me. Just each guest has their different interests, some perhaps a bit more niche than others, and yours that I'm going to be able to, have that conversation, be able to learn about that stuff. And I really look forward to it. And, just thank you for making time in your very, very busy schedule to be here. I do appreciate it.
No, I had fun. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it immensely. It's been a really good time. I've had a blast chatting your ear off.
Trust me, the pleasure was all mine. But we'll be heading out. We're going to be sending you over to Apple, so do let them know that Radia sent you. So if you have any of her emotes, spam those away, or just send some fun generic emotes and let them know that Radia says hi. So again, I'm Jay. This is Vtuber Talk. My guest tonight has been Radia. Oh, Itachi 259345623. Thank you for the follow, and let me make sure I didn't miss anyone else. Oh, Cinnamon Fart. Thank you for the follow. I was commenting in the pre-show chat. I was just like, Cinnamon Fart, that's a heck of a username. And Just Some Bear, thank you as well. Really appreciate you all stopping by, supporting Radia, supporting me. Again, this has been Vtuber Talk. Have a great time with Apple, and I will see you all later. Bye-bye, everybody.